we have some work to do on the sanitation fund. And so I'm sure that's something we'll be talking about soon. I did have one other question regarding the cash flow graphs in the worksheet. I just had ask you to clarify the negative cash flow. To me, if I'm reading it correctly, it's just really for that quarter, the reimbursements are going to be less than what we're expending, but the total pot of money, is that also going to be negative? Or it did look to me like the totals should take the whole grant fund negative.
Yes, were you able to see that where you had a cash flow? Ariane put a very nice quarter by quarter
Yeah,
explanation.
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is that I know that for the net reimbursements for the quarter may not be net positive, that we're expending more than we're getting back for that quarter.
Yes.
But is the grant fund in its entirety going to be negative at any point in 2018?
In 2018, can I use that, please? I'm trying to recall month by month, and I think there is a point toward October of 2018 that goes to a negative for a while. And I think that's because we'll be paying out some of these big river projects again and bridge projects about that point. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, the town won't be in a negative. It's just that fund will be in a negative until we get that final reimbursement. Then in 2019, we start not getting that reimbursement any longer. So we are having we've scheduled a cash flow meeting to sit down with all our staff to make sure we're all on the same page with that. I think that's scheduled this week, isn't it? Let me look at the date. If any of you would like to attend, you sure can. We're going to really go through it in detail to make sure that we understand when that will be happening. We're doing it, maybe it's early next week. When Ariane is back. But I can let you guys know when that is if you want to have a couple of you come so you understand how we're doing that together.
Yeah, I guess I'm glad to hear you have the meeting scheduled. I think that for me, what I would request is that you look at 2018, and I would look at it holistically for the entire grant fund, because we did pass a resolution that set limits to how negative that could go to float that with town reserves, which I think we said from the general fund is acceptable as long as it doesn't exceed our reserve levels. But I would also, if it's coming late in the year in October, I would talk to the state about that now and say we're going to need to schedule or make sure our reimbursements stay on track so that we don't get ourselves into a tight spot at any point. Really, I would prefer that we try to avoid negatives for the year if possible. So it's something that can be managed. I mean, it sounds like scheduling and just being aware of it, that tool is pretty helpful. So that would just be my feedback.
And then we do have the state here a week, next Friday, the 26th, for our quarterly state meeting, at which time we wanted to share with them as well the results of that meeting. So we're going to try to really tie it up for 2018 by the end of next week.
All right. Any further comments for staff?
I just have one thought. The cash flow spreadsheet is very complex, large and complex, and so coming to conclusions from the raw data takes some work on, especially from us in terms of, because we don't work with her all the time. I'm wondering if we might be able to identify 4 or 5 key questions that the spreadsheet is giving us answers to, rather than trying to work through it ourselves, such as reimbursements slowing down or on the schedule. Do we anticipate there to be a net negative during a given period? Those kinds of questions, so that we can confirm them by doing research on the raw data, but we get the benefit of your insight based on the spreadsheet.
That makes perfect sense.
All right. Any other items for staff? Keep wanting to talk in.
I don't know. Yeah.
Any other updates?
Other staff reports. I have been in touch with the state to ask them if there would be any impact if we have a federal government shutdown, to see what impact that would have potentially on our federal reimbursements. And any of our audits that might be scheduled during that time frame from the OIG would be postponed, those sorts of things. So they at this point said that most of the federal funding has been already given to the state, so it's in the state's hands to work with. But I don't want any of our projects to become ineligible for reimbursement later because we conducted them or paid them during a government shutdown. So I have reached out to the state to inquire, awaiting a formal response from Director Klein. So I just make you aware that we are looking at that. I'm also going to be reaching out to our OEM director to just talk a little bit about the incident that happened in Hawaii this weekend, since we're responsible to provide leadership in that situation. Just kind of updating what is Boulder County's response plan and trickling that down to the local level. So I have both of those on my radar, more as preventative measures to keep an eye on over this coming month or two. Any other questions that you guys have for staff right now?
Thank you. I think we'll go on to audience business.
Okay.
So at this point, we will open audience business. This is the portion of the meeting where the public is welcome to address the board on items that are not on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. We do have 2 public hearings scheduled for tonight, one for a liquor licensing application and also one for ordinance 1026, which is a lodging excise tax proposal. So if you're here for those 2 items, please hold your comments until we get to the public hearing. Otherwise, anyone is welcome to approach the board. Please give your last name, or your first and last name and address for the record. Would anyone like to speak at audience business? Seeing none, all right, we'll go ahead and move on from audience business. We do have one board and commission update, which is an appointment to the Lyons Arts and Humanities Council. If the board has no objection, I'd like to appoint Heather Baldrish, who has applied to be part of the Lyons Arts and Humanities Council and looks very qualified and eager to lend her talents and energy to that commission. So we'll go ahead and make that appointment. All right.
That commission is eager to have her talents.
Great.
What's the last name?
Baldrish.
Baldrish.
Thank you.
All right, at this point, I would entertain a motion to close as the Board of Trustees and open as the liquor licensing authority, or I should say, not close. Recess the Board of Trustees. Thank you.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion for the vote? All right, we are now the liquor licensing authority. Is there a staff report for the first item?
The staff report is very similar to last year's. They hold this event every year. Kim was working closely with Old Man Winter and Oscar Boots to hold the Old Man Winter bike race, which is held every year. Kim did ask that the town would waive the $25 application fee since Candidate has been so good to the town, which I agreed with, if you guys will agree with that. The application provided everything that we needed. The special events use permit from Parks and Rec, it'll be held in Sandstone Park. They've got a control plan in place where they rope it off, traffic control in place, zero waste is what they aim for. And so it was just really a typical one that came through. There was nothing that stuck out about it for me. Any questions?
Mayor President?
No, I got it. Thanks.
Any other questions for?
I have a question. So the application fee is $25. Is Candide paying for that, or is Oscar's paying?
Well, Candide and Oscars are kind of one and the same. It's their nonprofit.
Sure.
And so, and that fee goes directly to the town, not to the state. And that's why Kim had requested that we waive it, because she said, you know, they were such good partners and good friends with the town, so. We can choose to not waive it, but it's just her
I think
request.
the question is it Candate or is it Oscar Blues? Who's
Well,
applying?
Candate is their nonprofit
But
of
who's
Oxford
applying?
Blues. Candate is. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Is there a motion to approve the application for the special event?
I move to approve the candidate applications for special event permit for the, and further to waive the $25 application fee due to the fact that Candidate is a nonprofit that's worked closely with the town.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. And it passes 7-0, thank you. For the next item, we have a public hearing for a new liquor license application. So I will go ahead and call to order a public hearing for the Lyons Liquor Licensing Authority. The authority shall consider the application of, this is for Lumber Liquor, Matt and Leah Pierce.
Phoenix
I
contract.
believe the name will be in, yeah, Phoenix,
Okay, on the agenda.
yeah, contracting.
Okay, so this is an application by Phoenix Contracting. Will the clerk pro tem please introduce the case and enter the evidence and the necessary documents into the record?
Yes, so wish me luck on this one. This was my first one doing a brand new liquor license. And Lumber Liquors has been established and in place as long as I have been living in town. And they recently were changing hands. The owner decided to sell, and the new owners opted to go for a new state liquor license as well as a local license. You can transfer the existing license, but they opted to start clean and fresh. And so they've submitted all the proper paperwork for a new state license. We did all the background checks, the fingerprints, they've submitted all the paperwork. I went on site with our local building inspector because we were required by the state to go and do an inspection, which I had never done. So he was kind enough to walk me through it. We just made sure where liquor was controlled, where the exit signs were. There was really nothing that, nothing has come up. Zoning is confirmed, all the fees will be submitted. And it took a while. They started at the end of November, but getting the lease in place and trying to nail all that down. They were issued a temporary permit that is good for 120 days, so that will give enough time because the state level, once it passes here and I ship it off, it could take a while, but he should be covered and set for all of that.
And so, Ms. Vasquez, all the attachments to the application are part of the record here, as well
Yes.
as other documents received by you that support this application?
Yes.
Questions for the clerk pro tem before we open the public hearing? I don't see any hands. Okay, so we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for the liquor licensing application for, I can't get this name, Phoenix Contracting. Would anyone like to speak to this application?
And just so you know, the applicant is here if anyone has any questions on it.
Want to come up?
Liquor license.
Okay, all right, we'll close the public hearing, thank you. So, a couple of questions for the clerk pro tem. The application submitted to the town clerk, together with all the supporting documents, are hereby made part of the record. Any other documents presented to the authority during this hearing shall also be made part of the record if a copy is given to the town clerk. Was the notice properly posted and published for this matter?
Yes, ma'am.
In your packet is a copy of the publisher's affidavit regarding the publication.
The applicant does not care to make a presentation. Sorry, there's a script here. We're gonna-
I
It's a
know.
new script.
Me too.
One thing I do want to be sure that you get to before you get to on the road is establishing the neighborhood.
That's top of page 2.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that was part of the motion or if that was.
It's something you need to do in the proceedings in order to work on the needs and desires.
Okay, I move that the entire corporate limits of the town of Lyons be considered as the neighborhood for purposes of this liquor licensing application and public hearing. A statement or a motion?
It's a motion.
I'll second.
Can she make that?
I know, that's just odd. That's why I was thinking
Yes.
someone else needed to do it.
I don't know the real
That's
answer
okay.
to that, but I don't think you're gonna have any contested.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like anybody's contesting this application, so.
There's a motion and a second. Is there
Yes.
any further discussion?
Just pertaining to that, if I may, that I was required to fill out a petition and canvass the neighborhood, so that was definitely covered. We
And that's
part of the
also in the
documentation.
packet with all the verified
Yeah,
signatures.
we saw that.
Anything in yellow was not in the town limits, so, yeah.
All right, I will call for the vote on the question. And that passes 7-0. Demonstration of the legal right to possess the premise. Has the applicant provided the town evidence of ownership of the lease agreement?
Yes, the
Yes.
lease was included in the packet.
Right, does the zoning of the property permit the proposed liquor use?
Yes.
Does the applicant hold another liquor license or have another interest in any other business which is licensed under the state laws governing liquor licenses?
No.
I know this isn't an application, but it's, this, I'm assuming this is what I'm supposed to read these out loud.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
these are essential criteria to approving a liquor, a new liquor license at
Um,
this time.
Did the town's investigation of the applicant disclose any reason why the applicant cannot hold the license he or she is requesting?
No.
Has a liquor license been denied for the same premises or for a premise within 500 feet of the applicant's premises within the last 2 years based on the finding that the needs of the neighborhood do not support any liquor business?
No.
All right. Are there any other questions from the board regarding the application?
My only question is,
Mayor Pro Tem Greenberg?
yeah,
Would you like to speak?
yeah, I would.
No one is cooperating.
And I threw a monkey wrench into it.
Thank you,
Please
Mayor.
proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. In the motion to approve, is it state law that we have to determine if the applicant is of good moral character?
Yes, and there's lots of case law on that issue.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Got it.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I do have one question. On the application, there's a yellow highlight on the question 5, Roman numeral 5, that looks like it's highlighted maybe because it wasn't checked.
Copy of issues.
I'm
Oh,
curious
yes,
if
but
that
he
was
did send
satisfied.
them in the attachment. That was the one thing I was missing. Because
Okay.
I was going through my checklist to make sure I had everything.
So that box
Yeah.
can be checked. Okay, thank you very much.
I just want to note at the end of the staff report is a specific proposed motion or suggested motion if you'd like to rely on that as you go through this process.
That's what I was reading.
I would entertain a motion, please, if there are no more questions.
I move to approve the liquor license application for Phoenix Contracting. I specifically find that the establishment meets the reasonable needs of the neighborhood and desires of the adult residents of the neighborhood. The premise are suitable based on a review of the plans submitted and applicant is of good moral character.
Is there a checklist for that?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I just wanted to congratulate the new owners. I've been in several times since the ownership changed, and they have great recommendations for wine. So if you're looking for a new wine, they're doing a great job of making a good recommendation. So I would encourage everyone to support our local businesses. Hearing no other comments, we'll call for the vote. All right, passes 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to close as the liquor licensing authority and return to the DOT meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for the vote. And thank you, we're back as the DOT, just 7-0. We'll go ahead and move on to our ordinances and public hearing. We do have one ordinance on tonight's agenda. Will the clerk pro tem please introduce the ordinance?
Yes, public hearing for ordinance 1026, an ordinance of the town of Lyons adopting a new Article 10 to Chapter 4 of the Lyons Municipal Code, imposing a lodging excise tax for the town of Lyons effective June 1st, 2018, if approved by the registered electors of the town of Lyons, at an election to be held on April 3rd, 2018.
And I'll make a brief presentation, Kathy Deckenberger, Town Attorney. That title pretty much sums it up, but just to round out the discussion, this is the second reading of this ordinance that passed on first reading at our last regular meeting. And it is on the agenda with the proposal that it be referred to the voters for approval in compliance with our state constitution. And the point of having this approved or for consideration on second reading is just so that everyone has a good understanding of what will, if the voters approve, go into effect, what that regulatory structure will look like. And the key point being that only if the voters approve it will this ordinance spring into effect. If the voters do not approve it, then this ordinance will be null. Also, one point, we, at the request of town staff, updated this ordinance from first reading. As mentioned in your staff report, there was a thought of including camping as a lodging source that would be subject to taxation, and that ordinance has been revised to that effect. Your packet should contain a legislative version of that, which would show underlines of the changes made. That is optional. It's a policy decision for this board as to whether or not to agree to that, but that was staff's recommendation. It basically includes a definition as well as the term of lodging for a campsite, which is defined in the municipal code, and persons, which allows the town to collect a lodging occupation tax on the renting zone campsites as well.
All right, before we open the public hearing, are there questions for staff on the ordinance? On the board, Trustee Kirk?
Yeah, I guess, question, where did the $3 come from?
This, I know it's difficult tonight. The staff conducted a quite thorough, actually, review of neighboring campgrounds and statutory towns. And many of the communities that are not statutory impose a tax, so it's a percentage. So we did a survey of the communities that are similar to us, converted their percentages to a flat fee, and it came out with a range between about, I think it was like $2.80 up to $4 or $5 a night. And so we knew that we wanted to kind of start this at a more conservative level, so we were recommending $3 as the equivalent to the percentage that other communities were using.
So which statutory towns, let's see. So Lyons is a statutory town, right?
Statutory town.
Right, so what other statutory towns have similar fees and how much are
Almost
they?
everyone around us. Estes Park, town of Durango, I know Basalt came up today.
Larkspur specifically includes camping, and they have the Renaissance Festival.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking, isn't that Estes Park a home rule?
They are, and it
Oh,
really
I thought
doesn't
I'm
have to
sorry.
do
I'll look
with,
at, I'll get the chart
it's
out.
okay, it doesn't have to, I mean, your fee setting is really, the fact that it is done on a flat fee versus a percentage basis is really a separate legal analysis from the fact that it's a statutory or home rule town. But the town of Eagle set it at a flat fee, and this fee is designed and authorized as a means of covering the impacts to the town by the visitors, and specifically under a Supreme Court state Supreme Court decision, you need to, that cannot look like an income tax if you're a statutory municipality for sure, because that is reserved to the state.
So how much was Eagle's?
I think,
I'm trying to find the chart.
I think it may have been 3. I could find that, or 4.
Well, you know, I was just doing Google, and I found most of the home rule towns are somewhere around 2 or 3%, like Essex Park's 2%, I think Longmont's 2%. So I'm thinking, you know, if you have an average of $100, night, then that'd only be $2 rather than $3. So that's kind of why I was wondering where the $3 came from.
And tax rate analysis. And I can pass this on to the board. She was sharing it with the mayor along the way.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I didn't notice this was not in the packet.
I know, me too, I should have.
Because there is a nice analysis that was done, and it's pretty concise, so, I would say we could summarize that for the statutory towns, I would say it's about 50-50 whether they use a percentage or a flat fee. So I did have a question regarding how, was it simply that the town of Eagle was challenged because they have a lot of lodging?
I don't know why they were challenged, it certainly was lodging providers that filed the challenge. And as I read that decision, if this town were to adopt it on a percentage basis, it would be subject to challenge in the wake of that decision from the state Supreme Court. So my recommendation is flat fee.
So the other towns that are a percentage, do we have any idea whether they adopted it before Eagle or after Eagle?
I have not done that analysis.
Okay.
It's, different towns have different levels of support,
I found it.
so.
Berthoud is a statutory town, 3% excise tax on lodging. Blue River is a statutory town, 3.4% tax on lodging. Frederick is a statutory town, 4% lodging tax. Red Cliff is statutory, 3%. Eagle statutory, $4 flat fee. Mead is statutory town, $2 flat fee. Estes Park has a 2% local marketing district that gets the fee. And other Colorado counties that were ranging in the 2% area. Grand County has a lodging tax, sales tax, there's a whole thing about all sorts of rooms and camping on that one too. So those were 6 of our comparables in the end.
And the Supreme Court decision was 2000. I didn't know that.
Other questions, and then we will open the public hearing, and then we'll move on to discussion after a motion. So do you have a question?
Yes.
Trustee Dresden.
I have a question relative to changing of the amount. Would that have to be done by amendment of the ordinance, or can that be, is there a way we could build in a range or something similar to what we did with retail marijuana?
Oh. Well, I think since you're planning on, this is a tax, you need to refer for voter approval, and this is gonna be basically the ordinance that springs into effect. I think I would recommend picking a number. You can amend that tonight. You're talking about the dollar
No, in the
amount.
future, 2 years from now, do we want to adjust it to $5 a month?
Oh, well, that will increase the tax, so that would be a tax policy change. So it would be subject to a vote.
Okay, well, when we did the retail marijuana tax,
It's up to.
we put in some wording that allowed us to make adjustments without having to.
I recall seeing that. That was before I was, and I wasn't really involved in that. If you did an up to, that would be, I don't think prohibited in any way in the text of the ordinance. However, it would affect the ballot question, because you would need to change that, make sure that that reflected this, and you would have to have an overall amount imputed as well in the ballot question. And so you may end up, even if you select a lower amount, you would still, you may end up with an artificially inflated amount in the ballot question. And I think the ordinance should really set, for definiteness sake, but I would need more time to investigate this if you wanted me to do
I
it
don't
like
want to slow
that.
everything
Yeah.
down. So,
I know, so.
So then the question would be, in 2 years, we could just do an amendment to the ordinance, right?
Well, it would be
Well,
subject-
no,
you'd have-
I understand it would be contingent on vote, but.
Yes, you can always change your, increase your taxes if you follow the requirements of the law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Trustee Wong?
Is there a reason that you picked the 10th of the month for collection from businesses of the fee?
No, I mean, this ordinance is, yes, but it's not, that is a date that has worked in other ordinances similarly, but that can be changed if a different date works better for the town and its businesses.
Okay. And Victoria, maybe you could speak a little bit to how are you going to be collecting that fee from the businesses? Is that a process that staff needs to put together? Will it go through express bill pay, for example, or?
Yes, my understanding is that if this is passed, we would have, 30 days to, well, we have more than that, to get it ready, but we would come up with a process to do that similar to how we collect other fees.
As to the timing, the election's on April 3rd, so this starts, if approved, on June 1, and that was intentionally designed to give staff time to ramp up the program.
Just a point of clarification, my understanding is this would be paid through the state like every other sales tax. That's how others.
The sales tax?
No, it's an excise tax.
Right, but I think it's still, the state website has directions for how to calculate that and report that through the state. So we just might have to clarify whether this is something that's collected by the state, which I'm glad you mentioned that I had that on my list as things to actually take that out, because state taxes, if it goes to state, it's paid on the 20th of the month. And so we would want to maybe take out specific language related to what they.
This is based on the town of Eagle's ordinance, quite frankly, because that
Yeah.
survived the challenge.
I actually thought this is town though and doesn't go through the state. Am I wrong? I thought that
We'll need
only
to
town of
clarify that.
Lyons
It
is
sounds like,
collecting this.
I know when we were dealing with marijuana excise tax, it was done at the local level, but, I really, the attorney and Kim have both done this.
Well, I can drill down on process, that hasn't been something I've been involved in, but I can work with staff to get you more details on how that's collected.
Yeah.
And that part can be modified without a vote.
Yeah, I guess my question was, does it really need to be this specific, or could it simply say,
Could it just be general?
as determined by the town administrator on,
And in
something
compliance
where-
with
yeah.
applicable law.
It could be an administrative decision, I guess is what I'm implying, is that the administrator could say what day the taxes have to be paid, potentially.
Okay, and you're referencing section 41050, collection of tax, subsection 1.
I have one more question.
Trustee Bob?
The language in the ordinance says that we're going to use the funds, including but not limited to the general marketing and promotion of the town of Lyons, and the marketing and promotion of Lyons special events. I'm just curious as to why that language is in there. Why are we pinpointing those items as what we're going to use the money for?
Well, it's not exclusive to those. You're allowed to, the way it's drafted is any lawful municipal use. However,
Right.
that is specifically reflected in this ordinance because the justification and the legitimacy of this is collecting or taxes to offset the impacts on the town, in large part with lodging that comes with events and things of that nature. And so it's a specific call out, but it's not exclusive to that per case.
I think we'll go ahead and move to the public hearing. So I will go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 1026, an ordinance of the town of Lyons adopting a new Article 10 to Chapter 4 of the Lyons Municipal Code imposing a lodging excise tax for the town of Lyons effective June 1st of 2018 if approved by the registered electors of the town of Lyons at an election to be held on April 3rd of 2018. Would anyone like to speak to this issue? If so, please come forward, give your name and address for the record, and each person will be allowed 3 minutes. Seeing no takers, we'll close the public hearing. All right, we're gonna do things a little differently. We're gonna go ahead and ask for a motion before we open up discussion on the item. Is there a motion for ordinance 1026?
I move that we approve ordinance 926.
Is there a second?
1026, excuse me.
I'll second 1026.
All right, we'll go ahead and open up discussion. Would anyone like to start? Trustee Will?
Okay, I'll start. Correct me if I'm not proposing this.
You don't have to start with amendments. We can have discussion, so.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go, I guess I'm gonna go to that phrase that I just mentioned before about, you know, calling out that we're gonna use it for general marketing and promotion. I guess just to get your thoughts on that. I'd rather not call that out. I think the more logical use of it is to offset the impacts. Use it for maintenance and repair and that kind of thing. Or I don't know. I mean, there may be other uses for it. I just, somehow that language is, I'm not comfortable with calling that out and saying that we're going to use it for marketing and promotion, even though it's back to a different ordinance. I mean, I know we can use it for whatever we want. I just would rather see that language be more flexible.
And you're
Leave out
referencing the last whereas clause.
Call out. I think so, yeah.
So that's really not an operative part of the ordinance, so you can do what you want with that.
I don't know,
I just
guess
want to ask a
I'll
follow-up
talk
question.
about it, but-
Does that have to be in the ballot question? Because that's the language that's actually in the
Yeah,
ballot question.
yeah.
I recall that the ballot question has to indicate what you're going to use the funds for in some way. I couldn't be making that up. But I recall that most of our ballot questions do indicate why we're raising taxes. But I don't know if that's
Yeah,
required.
it has to include the purpose, but it does say the ballot question says for any lawful use or something. It's similar to this language here.
I think it's identical, if I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
correctly. So
Yes.
I'm wondering if that's the reason that's in here, is because that actually is what's in the ballot question. So I would just suggest that if we change this here, we should change the ballot question to reflect what it is in the ordinance.
And that's really my main reason for bringing it up, is because it's in the ballot question. And so, yeah, I don't want that to confuse the issue for the voters.
Mayor Pro Tem Greenberg?
Thank you, Mayor. In the ballot language, it says including but not limited to the general marketing and promotion of the town. So my understanding is that language is what's necessary to provide legal justification for imposing a tax. And so since it says including but not limited to, doesn't restrict the funds at all.
So,
Trustee
speak
Law?
back.
Sure.
I understand that. I think it's not our reason for imposing this tax. And so that's my discomfort with the language. And I think if I'm reading a ballot question, I'm going to jump to that, thinking that there's a logical correlation between this tax and promotion and marketing for the town. Not that I'm against promotion and marketing for the town, I'm all for it and have been working really hard on that in the last term, but that's it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other discussion, trustee? Addressed it.
Yeah, can I ask trustee Law a question?
Sure.
Okay.
Technically, I think you're not supposed to, but fill them up.
Would you be more comfortable if it said something like including the maintenance and upkeep of town infrastructure?
Yes, I would.
Which means it could be used for general marketing and promotion, but the thinking here is that the impact would be cars coming in, impacts on the parks, the use of town facilities and so forth. And that's really one of the purposes, one of the clear purposes that people would identify with.
Okay, other discussion points? Trustee Meyer?
Yes, I would like to agree with Julie on, trustee Law on her point. I'm not certain that, if we just have that language on there, there's a certain contingency that doesn't necessarily want more people to come in through the town. So, there's that. I also think that $3 isn't quite enough. I think 5 is more logical, or a more easily calculated number, and it's also in the range of some research that I've done in the range of lots of other places. So I would like to see 5 on there, really. That's kind of, and I would also like to see it mainly used for maintenance and renewal and that sort of thing. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Other comments? Yeah, Britton?
So, well, I have a question for council. Without this language and without that whereas, where does it place the ballot? Where does it place the legal standing for the imposition of this occupation tax?
You're okay with the, for example, the revision suggested or inquired about by trustee Drysdale. The important part is that voter approve it and they know what they're approving. You know, you don't specifically have to have that
Okay,
particular phrase in there.
all right.
But if you're gonna change, as Mayor Sullivan suggested, if you're gonna change one, change that.
So my other comment is that my first inclination is that a percent works better than a flat amount. And so, for example, if we were to say $5, which doesn't sound too exorbitant, but that is for camping. If we were then to say include camping, we're talking over 10% for our high season rate. And so rather than, that's a pretty significant amount to tack onto it, camping each day. Same thing with, say, any local rates that are below $100. That's pretty, $5 is then over 5%. And I think over 5% is pretty high for an occupancy tax, particularly for a town our size with limited demand. So I think a percent really helps with us being able to have small amounts for less expensive room rates, larger amounts for more expensive room rates. I understand the argument against it, but I think at least we should be, if we're going to go with a flat fee, then it has to, one, I don't think we can include camping, which I would want to. I think there's revenue to be captured that we'd miss out on. And I think then 5 would be too high for the reasons I explained.
I just want to be very clear that, and you said you understand the argument, but a percentage would be, make this ordinance and this tax vulnerable to challenge.
Yeah, I understand.
All right.
All right, trustee Kurt.
Yeah, you know, when I look at, you know, percentages, long months, 2%, you know, SS Parks, 2%, you know, Loveland is 3%, but when I look on what we would compete against, it would be the areas close by, and we're trying to bring a hotel into the area. If we tack on a big lodging tax, that could be counterproductive to trying to, you know, entice a hotel to, you know, locate it within Lyons. I think we should try to start off a little bit low until we actually get a hotel in town. And you know, when I look at the rates, you know, the Aspen Hotel and some of the places around, a lot of them, and the Airbnb places, they're all under $100, kind of averaging, you know, probably more like, you know, $80. So you know, at 2%, you know, we're talking, you know, under $2. I think $3 would be kind of high. You know, I could go with that, but I'd almost rather start off with 2 myself. I wouldn't want to go up to 5. I think that would be counterproductive, but not for us to try to bring in a hotel in towns.
Any other comments? All right, I'm gonna ask if anyone has any amendments they would like to offer.
I'd like to make an amendment. Start with the easy one. To section 41050, collection of tax. Number 1. Instead of the language, every vendor providing lodging taxable under this article shall remit such tax on or before the 10th. I'd like to strike that and change it to shall remit such tax as asked for by, or as defined by the town administrator, or on such date. I can't remember the language that we discussed, but.
On or before such date as the town administrator directs and in compliance with applicable law.
Perfect.
And then that would just be the first sentence and retaining the second sentence.
Yes. And there's another reference to tax collection in 410-100. I don't know if you want me to do that separately or in this.
I think it would be sufficient to say, please, you know, you could just say, make that
Throughout
reflect
the ordinance,
the same.
yeah, reflect that throughout the ordinance.
What section were you referencing? 100?
410-100 also has a reference to the 10th of the month somewhere.
Okay.
Number 2.
Okay.
Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on the amendment. And the amendment passes, I think, 7-0. Thank you. Other amendments?
Well, I have another question.
Which-
Before I move to make
There
it.
can be more discussion.
So I have a question for the town attorney. First, can you point, there was discussion I couldn't quite follow earlier from the staff about whether camping is exempt or not. And I think it was stated that camping was not included originally and is now included.
It is, and I apologize, I submitted a red line version for inclusion in the packet, but so you see those changes.
So where is it? What section number?
But,
Or is it just not exempt anymore? Is that what it is?
it is specifically included in the definitions. You'll see campsite as the first one, since those definitions are alpha. The other changes were in the definition of person, including the town. We would typically exclude the town as a government. And in the exemptions, we don't list the town as an exemption, so that's covered. Camping is also included in levy of tax 41030. Effective June 1, 2018, there's hereby levied by the town of Lyons an occupation tax on the provision of lodging that furnish on every person or business that furnishes any hotel room, motel room, etc., including campsite or other similar accommodations for monetary consideration for less than 30 consecutive days. And that references the $3 a day as
Right.
recommended by staff.
So as a follow-up question, may we have, since you're recommending a flat rate, may we have different rates for different types of lodging? So for example, can we say $3 per day and camping is $1 per day?
I would have to look at that. I think it would have to be in the ballot question. But I don't know if there's a single subject, if that would be too complicated for a ballot question. I don't know the answer to that question. definitively right this, at this moment, if it would require a separate ballot question or not. Yeah, I'd have to do some thinking and researching on that one.
I'd like to ask a question for the town attorney or town clerk pro tem. Do you know when the ballot language needs to be approved to make the filing date?
Oh, I have that calendar at my desk.
I think it's after February 5th, but not long after that.
It's like February 8th is what
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
So if we needed to continue one of the ballot question resolutions tonight, I just want to make sure there would be sufficient
Sure,
time for
time,
us
yes.
to approve them at our February 5th meeting. But I would really like to confirm that so we don't miss an opportunity. I mean, I guess if we had to have a special meeting.
I believe that is the case.
Okay.
We were planning on having some room in the calendar for this.
Yeah, I recall that as well, but it's in February, but I don't remember the exact date.
But I can look real quick. I think I've saved the calendar. I have it printed on my desk.
Well, while you look that up, and I just really haven't weighed in yet. So I think this is really good discussion. I think there are compelling kind of reasons for all these directions that we could continue to go. But I do agree with the sentiment that I'm hesitant to apply a $3 fee to campsites. I just feel like that's a significant price increase that I think allows those people to camp because it is less expensive and, well, that's mostly what we have available. But I think that it's different. You know, I think that people are pretty accustomed to having taxes on their hotel stays. I mean, very few places you go these days where there's not some sort of fee. So I think, you know, we're in the ballpark of where we need to be for lodging. And I also think the flat fee has advantages in being easy. You know, I think a lot of people are going to be Airbnb. You know, this is going to apply to short-term vacation rentals of all kinds. So the easier we make it, probably the more compliant people will be. But I really don't like that format. I really would prefer the percentage as well. I think it moves with inflation better. It reflects the cost of the lodging a little better. But I also see the point of we don't want to be too aggressive out of the gate. But you know, I do think the town would support it. It is going to the voters, that's the other thing. And I don't think we're at a high risk of having a challenge come forward, but I do agree with the comment that we don't want to create a deterrent when we are really hoping to recruit some sort of formal hotel business to town. So, you know, I would, I guess, lean toward the flat fee, but without camping. If there's an option for a range, I think that's nice. I think whatever we do, that we're going to live with for a long time. I don't see this going back to the voters every couple of years to increase this fee. So, you know, I think my hope is that we set it at a reasonable amount, but also capture some revenue from it. I mean, if we don't include camping, I think we also leave some revenue on the table to offset. There's a lot of maintenance to our campgrounds that comes into play with this. So
I just want to add to that point. I mean, you charge a fee for camping, and that's another way. And fees need to be commensurate with the service provided. That fee can be adjusted without this process, if you need to offset that.
Yeah, I would say the only, in my mind, the only thing the camping fee would apply to would be festival camping. Say riverbend and new kind of bluegrass properties, and that's only for a short duration, you know, probably a couple, 2 or 3 festivals a year. And so for our campgrounds, like Ken said, you know, we can just raise the rates, that's not an issue. So I don't think it really applies to our campgrounds. It only applies to other campgrounds that we don't collect revenue on.
We have to adjust the language.
So, it's okay, trustee Dressen, go ahead.
I believe and I was thinking along the same lines, but I think we would have to adjust the language because the exemptions only apply to the U.S. government, the state of Colorado, and Uli Mossner organization.
It could be applied to Lyons too, but, I was making an argument why we wouldn't need camping included in there.
Yeah, no, and I'm agreeing, I'm just saying that we have to adjust that language a little bit.
Okay, right.
Is there, Mayor Pro Tem, you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fair point. However, I don't want to, if we have an opportunity to generate revenue from the festivals, I think, and we should, I think, however, $3 for a camping ticket for the festival might be excessive. I think we really want to make sure that we're not overly aggressive with how much we are taxing campers who are camping at the festival. We don't want to discourage it. It seems to work really, really well. I do think that it makes sense for the town to collect lodging revenue on folks who are here. There's a significant impact to the town, and the town and the residents of a town have a right to economically benefit in multiple ways. This is one of them. But I want to be really careful that we're not changing the experience too much where we're negatively impacting a pretty successful festival and camping. And so that's why it still makes sense to me to include camping to have a lower rate. My other question would then be, is it possible to have different fees for different rates? So if you were to say it's a particular fee for under $100 per night and it's another fee for more than $100 per night, is that one way to do it?
I just don't know the answer to that question right now. I don't know of any other jurisdiction that has done it that way, for what that's worth, but I would have to do some thinking on that.
Thank you. And I would just say my motivation is to try to keep the most affordable places to stay in town affordable and not overtax them and see it. I just think there's an issue of fairness.
So we're at a point, I think we've heard from most everyone on the issue. I guess we have a couple options. If we have a motion and a second on the table to pass the ordinance, we could rescind that and continue it if we want to direct staff to do some further investigation, or we could work through this in the amendment process and see where we land. So I'll open it up to motions at this point.
Mayor,
Yes.
I do have the calendar in front of me to the extent that might
thanks.
impact your
Yeah.
debate. It doesn't specifically say last date to, have things in place to print the ballots, but I think the last day to mail the ballots to overseas voters and military was what was driving Ms. Anthony's consideration, and that's February 16th. Means you have to have some room in there to print the ballots. I don't know how much time that takes, but I do believe, and I don't know if Ms. Vasquez can confirm this, that, February 5th meeting would be a possibility, especially given that if everything else went on.
Does anyone want to offer an amendment? We'll start there.
Well, I have another amendment, but.
Go ahead. People can think.
But it
loudly.
might be, if we're going in a different direction. All right, so I would like to propose an amendment to the last whereas. And it states, whereas the Board of Trustees desires and finds that it is necessary to adopt a lodging occupation tax to be spent on any lawful use. I would like to strike the language, keep including but not limited to, and strike the general marketing and promotion of the town of Lyons and the marketing and promotion of Lyons special events for the purpose of generating additional revenue for existing and future lodging and other businesses located in the town of Lyons. So I think I want to strike all that and replace it with, so I'll start at the beginning again just to make it clear. Whereas the Board of Trustees desires and finds that it is necessary to adopt a lodging occupation tax to be spent on any lawful use, including but not limited to cost of accounting for impacts of short-term visitors to the town of Lyons.
The cost of accounting for impacts of short-term visitors to the town of Lyons.
Correct. And then the next part would be subject to approval by the registered electors of the town at the April 3, 2018 regular election.
I'll second.
All right, discussion? I just want to make, I'll just make one point. I think because it's a whereas, I think that language is
Oh, right.
fine for this ordinance. I do think we may want to just make sure the ballot question, when we get, we would need to pull that, if this passes tonight, well, if we make this change, we'll pull the ballot question
That's
anyway.
on consent.
That's on consent tonight, to make sure we make the language consistent. But I would like the attorney to review the language, make sure it still meets all the statutory requirements that the ballot question needs to. In the meantime. Okay.
Well, and I do believe the resolution also authorizes the town attorney to make recommendations. So, if not, we can make sure it does that as well.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on the amendment to change the last whereas. And that passes 7-0. I'm gonna offer an amendment to change the rate from a flat fee of $3 for per occupied lodging room accommodation or campsite to $2.
Just to clarify, you're including camping.
Including camping.
Okay. I'll second your amendment.
Is there discussion?
I have a question.
Trustee Miller?
Yes.
Trustee Wassheim and Trustee Miller.
I just wonder what the difference is between raising the rates for camping and, does the money go somewhere else? I mean, do you know what I mean?
If you're asking me why I'm saying that, I think it's, for me, it's a compromise to include camping, but keep the dollar amount sufficiently low so that it's not, because as a percentage, if this were being done as a percentage, that percentage on camping would be a much higher percentage tax than it would be on a hotel room. That is a higher dollar amount per night. So,
Right.
you know, it's just $2 is a higher percentage of $50 than it is $100 essentially. So that's why it's a possible compromise, but, you know, we can see how the board feels about that. So, I'm just putting it out there to see if this can move forward. I could live with that change. Any person?
I understand the point of trying to compromise so that we can include camping. It's still a pretty high, if you think about it, it's a pretty high percentage. $2 on low season camping is let's see, over 7%. So essentially what we're doing is we're taxing at a higher rate the folks who are staying for the least amount of money. And taxing at a lowest rate the people who are staying for the most amount of money. So if we're not going to use a percentage, what I would support more is the exploration of whether or not we can either charge certain types of lodging, one fee versus other types of lodging, or specifically call out camping and have a different rate for camping than we do for the $3 flat fee. And I think that would help convince me that that would be the compromise that would make the most sense to me, and keep camping rates as low as possible, so that we impact campers the least.
Is there Trustee Kerr?
My comments in regards to that is, I kind of like having the low rate. I think, again, in my mind, what it only applies to is festival camping at this point in time. We can always lower our camping rates off-season for our campgrounds, and so it won't affect off-season camping. It's only going to affect you know, the very highest, you know, when the town's inundated with people. And so I like the idea of, you know, dropping it down to $2 overall, and so I think that's a good compromise. I think even, you know, even $2 for, you know, regular hotel, I think we're probably over, you know, our low, you know, we're probably around 3% of what the average room rental would be, which would be on par with Loveland, but still higher than Estes and Longmont.
Well, for example, Berg's Inn, which has a high season rate of $175, from what the information I have in front of me, $1.20 is 2%. For high season, $3.50 is 2%. $4.58 for Wee Casa for the high season rate. So, and $150 Airbnb is $3 at 2%. So $2 is, I would not consider high. And the only place I would consider to be high is even for festival goers who are camping. I think it's a fair point to say that's when we have the greatest impact on our town. So I think it can be reasonable to say that, well, that's when it's okay that they're paying a high percentage. That's a fair point. But it's not even, $2 is not even 2% in a lot of cases.
Trustee Johnson, do you have a question? Okay.
Well, I think I'm agreeing with the notion that you can, that we could waive, or we could exempt the camping that's provided by the town. And at least in it, to me, it could be $2 or $3. I really I don't have strong feelings about that. I do like the idea of not adding to the cost of the casual campers in the parks. And I think whether it's $2 or $3, compared with the overall ticket prices for the festivals, I would see that as being something people even notice. So whether we do it by leaving the tax on our parks camping, other than the festivals, and then reduce the fee, or just exempt the town, which I think would be actually easier, I would actually recommend that.
Can I ask a point of clarification? I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. Currently, the town camping is not exempted by the language.
Right, I made changes to the last to include town-provided camping.
Correct. So we would just, so in order to accomplish what Trustee Drysdale just said, we would just add, provided by the town of Lyons in 41040 number 1. If we wanted to exempt town camping.
That and, yeah, I think actually first reading ordinance did say, you know, local governments or something. And then the definition of person, we would take out the town of Lyons. Up above in 41020. Because the tax requires every person who's providing lodging, and person being the town, if the town's providing lodging, but you would just take it out there. What we would do rather is move it from that first part of the clause or the definition to, but shall not include the United States of America, state of Colorado, or the town.
Okay. So I guess just I'll make sure everybody's clear on what the motion is currently to reduce the fee to $2, and which would include camping as it's currently drafted, unless someone offers another to exempt the town. So right now it would include the town. So any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on the amendment. Sorry. Go ahead, Trustee
Repeat the
Drysdale.
amendment that we're voting on.
The amendment is to change the dollar amount from $3 to $2. Everything else as is currently. So I'll call for the vote. So, I'm sorry, it's hard to see.
5-2.
Okay, so the amendment passes 5-2. Are there any further amendments?
I would like to amend the ordinance by removing the phrase "and the town of Lyons, Colorado" from the definition of person in 41020, and add the phrase "and the town of Lyons" to section 41040, number 1.
Is there a second?
Can you repeat that? Person remove town of Lyons, is that
From the definition.
from the definition of person?
Correct.
Okay.
May I make a suggestion? I just did a quick look, and I think that's all that's necessary to make the ordinance reflect what you're saying. But if there's any direction to me to be, make any other changes that would carry that intent through, I would take it as such
May I
anyway.
modify the motion to include direction to the town attorney to make any adjustments that would enable the intent of this motion?
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, call for the vote on the amendment. And the amendment passes 7-0. Are there any other amendments to the ordinance? Hearing none, I would open up any final discussion for the overall motion, which is to approve the ordinance. Trustee Waugh?
I probably should have done this way earlier. I wasn't really thinking, but I would like to disclose that my husband is a partner in We Casa Tiny Home Resort, but I don't believe I have any financial gain as when voting on this matter, but just wanted to make that disclosure.
Thank you. All right, not hearing any further discussion, I'm going to call the vote on the motion to approve ordinance 1026 as amended. All right. And the ordinance passes 7-0. All right, thank you. Will the clerk pro tem please read the items in the consent agenda into the record, please?
Sorry, it's just let me know.
And the audience here is okay. We're microphone challenged tonight, so yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, consent agenda, resolution 2018-11, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a ballot question to be submitted to the voters at the regular mail ballot election to be held April 3rd, 2018, related to the imposition of a lodging occupation tax for the Town of Lyons. Number 2, resolution 2018-12 of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a ballot question to be submitted to the voters at the regular mail ballot election to be held April 3rd, 2018, related to the local right to use municipal fiber optic infrastructure. Resolution 2018-13, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving 2 ballot questions to be submitted to the voters at the regular mail ballot election to be held April 3rd, 2018, related to authorizing the mayor and members of the Board of Trustees to serve 4 consecutive 2-year terms of office pursuant to the right granted to voters of the town in Article XVII, Section 11 of the Colorado Constitution. Number 4, first reading of ordinance 1029, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lyons rezoning certain town-owned property from medium high-density residential district R2A to municipal facilities and services district M, and amending the official zoning map of the Town of Lyons. Number 5, resolution 2018-2, a resolution adopting a classification and pay plan for the employees of the Town of Lyons, Colorado. Number 6, resolution 2018-7, a resolution approving an amendment to the intergovernmental cooperative agreement with Boulder County and the Boulder County Sheriff's Office. Number 7, Resolution 2018-9, a resolution authorizing the Third Amendment to the Disaster Recovery Services Agreement between the town and DHM Design Corporation for additional design services for Phase 2 of Bone Park reconstruction. Number 8, 2018-10, a resolution memorializing the approval of the Lyons Municipal Center plat and accepting the dedication of Railroad Avenue right-of-way. Number 9, the January 2018 accounts payable. Number 10, December 18th, 2017 Board of Trustees meeting minutes. Number 11, January 2nd, 2018 Board of Trustees meeting minutes. Number 12, Resolution 2017-135, a resolution approving a lease of town-owned property with Telluride Bluegrass Festival, Inc. for the 2018 Rocky Grass Festival. Number 13, Resolution 2017-136, a resolution approving a lease of town-owned property with Telluride Bluegrass Festival, Inc. for the 2018 Folks Festival. And number 14, Resolution 2018-14, a resolution approving the First Amendment with Boulder County Sheriff's Department regarding the jail crew boss.
All right, would anyone like to pull any items from the consent agenda? Trustee Young.
I would like to pull item number 1, resolution 2018-.
Go ahead, because I'm gonna find it.
Okay, I would like to pull items 2, 3, and 6. Any others?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just need to find the right number. I apologize. Which one is the one that sets it as, not the rezoning one, but the plat?
Number 8.
Thank you. I'd like to put that in.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 1, 2, 3, 6, and 8?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. And the consent agenda is approved minus those items. All right, we'll move on to general business item number 1, which is discussion and direction of staff concerning the Lyons Village Police approval. I don't believe we need a presentation. I think we're just having discussion. Do we need a presentation?
No, we don't need a presentation, but I was gonna have a
I don't know that we need to.
No?
Well, I guess we can say it's really for the board to discuss at this point, but yeah, we have questions.
We're here if you need us.
Okay, thank you. We're here for support. Anyone want to offer that?
Do you want a little sample of what happened?
I think we'll just, okay, it's an abstract. It's okay. Anybody want to start? Mayor Pro Tem.
I guess I have a question for staff. As part of the presentation, it seemed as if there's still quite a few moving parts to the proposal, some details to fill in, and some things that might change. So could you talk a little bit about how you see staff's role in shaping this to a final product, and then at what point, and if the board were to approve this tonight, what further oversights do we have other than the rezoning process for this? Is this an ongoing conversation? Or what should the board expect?
I'd like to start. First of all, we're not asking you to approve their proposal tonight. We really just want some direction from listening to the proposal and the feedback and the questions you have, to continue to meet with the developer that presented tonight, if that is your intent, and if so, then we will start working on some of the more details. We certainly don't want them to invest more time and money if it's really not something you have a strong interest in, nor do we, we want to use staff time that way. So if this is something you have an interest in, We would meet with them, start answering the questions that were brought up at the workshop tonight. Also, we would need to work out some form of a purchase or sale agreement, purchase and sale agreement with the developer. That will take a little time with the attorneys, as well as some more of the next steps of just standard protocol in the entitlement process. You know, putting together a time frame for rezoning, any variances they may be requesting, those sorts of things. So it really at this point is whether or not there's strong enough interest from the board to move forward with doing the fine tuning of the proposal.
So before we go too much further, I want to offer disclosure, just that I own a business, a part of our business that purchases produce, which is part of the proposal, and also could be seen as a competitor to the proposal for the second purchase, rather not apples to apples comparison. Produce is- That wasn't even planned. It's a very small percentage of our total business. I don't believe it's substantial, and I believe I can be objective in evaluating the proposal. I just want to offer that. Trustee Drystead, did you want to repeat
Yes.
the one you offered? Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to disclose that my daughter and her husband own an organic farm in Hygiene, which is nearby, which may or may not have interactions with this proposal. But I have no personal financial interest in the organic farm, and so I believe I can be objective in
And after our discussion in the workshop, I understand that short-term vacation type rentals may be part of the proposal. So I would just, again, disclose that my husband is a partner in We Casa Tiny Home Resort, but also don't feel that that's going to compete with this development proposal. And I think I could be completely objective in my decisions tonight.
All right, we'll continue with discussion. Anyone else want to offer? Just the general trustee, Miller?
No, I think, I like it. I mean, I think it's a fascinating, proposal. I'm excited to kind of see which direction it goes. I would urge you to, follow up with the lower income, part of, 40% AMI, that sort of thing. I also think that instead of like a hotel, the hostel is a much better idea, mainly because I think it lends itself to a lower, it's not quite as expensive for people to stay in places like hostels, and I find that appealing for people that I associate with.
Other comments? No, trustee Moore?
Sorry, I thought you were looking at me. I guess I am a bit disappointed that we didn't see more proposals come in, but I am really encouraged by this proposal because it does really hit on all the aspects that we're looking for the Eastern Corridor. I would definitely like to see some kind of short-term lodging out there. I also like the idea of a hostel, but I'm not sure that would complement the wedding industry, but the nature of the proposal as a whole doesn't really necessarily fit that scenario anyway. And yeah, I would just agree with the sentiment that there's a lot of proposed space for retail, and I think to make that successful, there would need to be some kind of an anchor, which leads to, a chain. Just personally, my opinion is that would be the only way that much retail space would work if you had that anchor, and I'm not sure how I feel about that because we are a town with solely, sole proprietors operating businesses, and although it's hard, we've all tried to make it work and I think been really successful. So I'd like to see more of that.
Thanks. Any others? Comment? Steve Reichstad?
Yes, I also like the overall concept. I like the food-related development concept on the north side, and I also like the fact that there would be more accommodations, however you want to define that in terms of, that on the south side, whether it ends up being a hotel or hostel or rooms that would be available through an Airbnb arrangement. I think all of those would add to the town's ability to have people stay overnight and possibly even have conferences and so forth that would be beneficial to the town overall. I do think, and we'll get to the motion, like to include in the motion the development of a timeline and roles and responsibilities of the, at least the high level town staff and the committees, the commissions. So that there will be a little bit of a plan of like who's gonna have to do what by when, over the next probably year and a half or so.
Yeah, thank you. I think generally speaking, it's a really creative way in which to develop an area of town that can really support the town. I like a lot of the ideas behind it. I like how housing's incorporated into it. I like that it would stand out as different than a lot of the entire surrounding area. I think that's a huge strength. I'd really like to push very hard on the housing aspect. I know there are significant restrictions with low-income housing tax credits, and I don't think we can really do this without low-income housing tax credits. So, but within those restrictions, I think it's really important that we look for ways to offer units for AMIs that are, let's see how low we can get within reason. Even if the preponderance are at 60% AMI. I'd like to be able to try to support local businesses and local business owners who want to live in Lyons and own a local business, but can't afford to do so. Being a local business owner does not necessarily mean you can afford a house in a neighborhood where it starts at $500,000 a year. $500,000. Those two things don't necessarily go together. So we're not just talking about waiters and waitresses as well. We're talking about lots of folks. As far as the commercial aspect goes, the other thing that concerns me about the housing is just, and it may be unavoidable, but there needs to be ways in which it doesn't become a segregated set of units, that it doesn't necessarily be the low-income neighborhood. Lyons has always been a place where the incomes of neighbors have been different by huge amounts. We have lawyers living next to folks who work in a quarry. And that's part of the character of Lyons. It had been part of the character of Lyons. And I would like to seize any opportunity to maintain that character. So when we talk about what fits, that's something that fits. And while it might be a challenge to do or really difficult to do, I think throughout the entire process, it's really important that we find every opportunity to try to address that whenever possible. There's not many places left in the country, perhaps, where that's true. So let's not be one of those places that just turns into only housing for some people, only a place to live for some. As far as the commercial aspect goes, again, there's some really exciting parts to the commercial aspect. which could set us apart and be a draw and be interesting. And there seems to be jobs related, which is great. It was also acknowledged in the presentation that there's some pretty heavy lifting to do for certain aspects, that the word challenging came up a few times. And I'm really appreciative of the fact that that was acknowledged. I was concerned that I was going to come to the presentation and it was going to be told, it was going to try to be sold to me as, oh yeah, this is no problem, we can totally do this. So I was actually heartened to hear that the presentation included the fact that there might be some really heavy lifting to do, and that's great. I think if we're going to have backup plans, well, what else might go here? There needs to be ways for the town to maintain its oversight of what that is, within reason for a development. That the backup plans get fleshed out enough so we know what to expect. The biggest way to make something fail, anywhere, most likely, but particularly in a town as knowledgeable and active as our residents are, is to have people feel as if there's a bait and switch going on. And so, even if there's just a perception of it, so let's work, I think it really is incumbent upon how this is put together so there's not even a perception of that. And to echo what Trustee Waugh was saying, I think it's a point of pride in town that we are almost exclusively resident-owned businesses. We're not 100%, but we're very, very close. That is also something that is rare all around the state, and I think in the country. So I think that the need for an anchor business is clear. That makes perfect sense. The need for it to be a chain is not clear to me. So I get one, but I don't get the other. And I would say that chains are one of the biggest fears expressed by residents who support Eastern Corridor development, but want to be cautious about it. And the last thing we want to do is have some things go up that do two things. One, people point at it and say, I told you. See, I told you. And two, it negatively impacts our locally owned businesses in an unfair way. Competition is great, but to maintain locally owned businesses, we need to be really careful. Because locally owned businesses do not always have the working capital in order to compete. And so that's, I would express just a word of caution about how we proceed with that. But overall, I think it's worth moving forward, absolutely.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Trustee Karas.
Thank you, Mayor Sullivan. I'd like to thank the group for coming out to us with such a, having the fortitude to come to us with a big project like this, an aggressive project. I've made comments on this board several times about sometimes we need to go big or go home, and I think you definitely brought that to us. And I like it because something like this could easily go in Longmont and Boulder. And I do like seeing something like this, and we'd like to move forward with that. I think our river, talking about helping preserve our river, make it a nice place to visit, grow facilities like this, agriculture come from the state of Nebraska. People will travel here. If it does work out for you, people will travel from the other countries, other states. They learn. That's, I think, Paul, you brought that up before, someone did. And that only helps, as we talked about, other places, other properties that can add lodging, hopefully, in the coming years, short term. And that would be a benefit for all. And with a long-term, I guess, agreement with Longmont to connect the river via trail in 10, 12 years, having something anchored there like that right away might speed that process up even. So bikers and hikers can traverse back and forth along a nice, beautiful corridor. So thank you for a project like this, and I do look forward to going forward with it.
Trustee Curtis?
I do like the proposal as submitted, and but I'm also interested in the backup plans. You know, if something doesn't work out, I encourage staff to move forward on this.
Okay. I think everybody everybody's had a chance to kind of weigh in. So I guess I also want to thank the team for coming out today and all the work that you put into this. Clearly, you're all very passionate about these projects and the innovative kind of thinking that goes into growing food sustainably. I think that's something that will really resonate with Lyons residents in our community. And I think you're clearly a really impressive team. So I feel fortunate that you guys have come to Lyons and see us as a potential site for your ideas. I also really like the educational aspect and the research component. I do think there's a, there's a tourism component that could come with that. People would be very interested in coming to learn more about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and I would really hope that agricultural aspect would be successful, because I think it could support all of the other concepts in the design. I do have concerns about the current plan for the south side. I think the ratio of housing to retail seems too high for me compared to other projects that I've looked at that are going up that are mixed use. And for the town this size, that's a really significant amount of retail when all you read about is how retail is going online, and most of what is really surviving is non-commodity based purchasing. And I know we have mostly a restaurant-based business community here, and outside of restaurants, what else will work there is my concern. And we've all said we really want to be cautious about competing too much with our downtown business district, and those restaurants are, all struggle as it is, and so that seems to add a little bit more competition for the restaurants, but I also think it can be compatible if done correctly. Housing is really what we need most, and so I just wonder, is there a way to add more, even if it's on the market rate side, or using those types of units, which I think sound really interesting, that they're really small, maybe great Airbnb spots, could be a lodging solution, even if it's a little non-conventional. Is there a way that you do more of that? The other thing we've also talked about as a board is that the whole area has a little bit of an industrial feel, and we've heard a lot about the need for small manufacturing, artist spaces, where they can do a lot of creative type things, and I don't know if that's something that was looked at. So I guess that would be my only thing. That south side is a special spot, and I think we all realize there's a lot of potential for that spot, and we want to make sure we get the highest and best use. And the retail being on that side almost seems like it misses too the flow of traffic. With that being a highway, it would be very hard for people coming into town to access, if we had the types of businesses there that would attract tourists. It's kind of on the wrong side for me, for the way we see people traveling. So those are just some initial thoughts. Overall, I really, really like this concept. I think it meets a lot of our needs. I think it has the right values associated with it, but I do have those concerns about the retail and the south side of it. So I would be very interested in continuing the discussion. I think we have some other things we have to figure out related to the funding for the affordable housing piece, which we will take up later in our discussion. But overall, I'm supportive of the concept very much. Any other comments? And I think does that give you sort of sufficient direction?
It gives me sufficient direction. Do we need a formal motion to proceed working with this group? Or no?
I don't think so. I think
Okay, great.
we'll go with that. All right, thank you. Resolution 2018-15, bring it over to staff for a brief discussion. I do want to put out on the table for the board, though, it came to us late today. And I would say if we feel better about this continuing on this meeting, maybe we know using the last classes too. Is there a recommendation from staff regarding moving forward tonight, or?
I really think it depends on a couple levels. People have had a chance to review it. It's a basic agreement with the state on their commitment to continue with us on affordable housing and to earmark up to $4 million. for projects or projects in town, and to assign someone from the Division of Housing staff to work as our consultant and technical assistant. So if you're comfortable with that, we can adopt it. If not, I do believe the Division of Housing is planning to attend our next meeting on February 5th in the hopes that we might have an RFP or other purchase sale contracts to review in addition. So it really is up to the board.
Just on that note, in terms of timing, again, there's no penalty, but I do know from speaking with Division of Housing today, time is of the essence at this point in general in moving these projects along.
Yes.
Not so much as governed by this agreement, but the idea would be to have purchase agreements in place and RFPs going out for projects on that property ASAP. This agreement does mention by the end of January, but I added some for extending that for purposes of your understanding, in case, as we know in real estate deals, things don't always go according to the timeline. But there are some draft RFPs that I think.
We're going to talk about the executive.
Yeah, those will be discussed later, but they're already moving in that direction, and the idea would be that any development would be assigned sooner rather than later.
To be eligible for this round of tax credits, this 9%, we really need to have a purchase and sale agreement in place by the end of February. And the deadline for application, not just letter of intent, but the application is May 1st. So really, this one does not, it doesn't matter, but it does show, again, a good faith effort with the state that we're committed, they're committed, and we're all making this a priority if we approve this part.
Okay, Mayor Burton.
Thank you. Well, you addressed this in part, and so in town obligations 3.1 mentions January 2018, and so you said that that's not necessarily a hard and fast date.
Well, if you talk to the Division of Housing were here, based on my conversation today with one individual, I feel fairly certain they would say, it's what we want to have happen, but I argued that sometimes what we want to have happen is not necessarily what can happen based on shifting circumstances. And so there is an opportunity in this proposed language to agree to an extended deadline if both parties agree to that. I just thought that was a safer route to go.
Sure. I think the language that concerns me is because a lot of what's in here is very promising, particularly it shows a commitment from the town, but also the Division of Housing obligations, which I think actually are really nice for us to have spelled out in this language. Like that's.
And they provided that language.
Right.
I was grateful on the town's behalf for that.
And the goal to replace 100 units.
Exactly. I think there's a lot in here. It says shall secure agreements to purchase such parcels by the end of January 2018. So I guess would staff recommend it? That's actually
Mine says in a
doable.
timely fashion.
That was what I had proposed.
Oh.
And the Division of Housing actually came back with a hard and fast deadline because they want to see this moved along because of the income housing tax.
I would actually, I would like to see the board continue this, honestly. I mean, I feel like this final version didn't come in until late today, and I've read it, but I have some concerns about how that reads. I know they're hoping to get this done with the town administrator object to continue on this.
I don't object. And I talked with them this afternoon as well. And they know that it may be, that it wasn't received till late in the day, and that you may choose to continue.
Is there a motion? Trustee Drysdale, or do you have a question?
I had a question before. What I'm wondering is if along with a continuance, we would give a positive signal about how intensely interested we are in this and how we very clearly want to move it forward. And it's merely a matter of the timing of receipt of this for adjusting it and developing our thinking forward. So that it's not just a continuance, but there's also a very strong message of interest and desire on the part of the board.
Additional questions? I would concur with that. I mean, I think we've been wanting to get this in place for a while. I just think I want to make sure we have the flexibility that we need and the timelines. That's the only concern I had, was just understanding, and I just don't feel like in a document that has $4 million at stake, a one-time through read is sufficient for my comfort level to approve it tonight, so that's my.
Well, it could be because we may miss this tax credit whole cycle. We may have to, you know,
The
go to the
9%.
next one.
Yeah.
So it should really be worded that if there is not something in place for that, that you're not, you know, that it doesn't exempt us from the next round.
Well, the other thing is that it has the September 2019 wording in there, but it doesn't really define what spent means. And I think we may want to add some language in there
Okay.
about what does that actually mean? Obligated? Does it mean?
No, it means spent.
Spent. So
Yeah.
I would like to see, so maybe we could, you know,
Okay.
if you want to send any additional questions just to the town attorney, if you go through it again individually, then we can go back to them and say, you know, we definitely want to get this in place, but we just have a few questions that we would like to clarify. So,
Well, and if needed, we do have January 29th, because we really probably shouldn't enter a purchase and sale agreement until this MOA is in place, because we can't guarantee that funding until this is here, to that potential property. So if that happens, would there be a quorum for the 29th?
20th of January?
Yes,
I most likely would
not be here, okay. I just was thinking that because
I can be here.
if we want to enter that, I really need this in place.
For the town.
We want to make sure the formalities
So
are
I-
paid.
Well-
Well,
I think it sounds like
possibly not.
there's 4 of us, I think, that say we would be here for the 29th, that if it was merely to just kind of approve this.
To approve this so that we can enter purchases.
Okay.
Mhm.
Would you still want them to sign?
Is there a motion from the board?
Yeah, I move that we continue resolution 2018-16 to, well, we usually continue to specific dates, but.
Only on a public hearing,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
published in notice, do you
Just
have to do that?
Move that we continue resolution 2018-16. I further move that we direct staff to communicate to the Division of Housing and other stakeholders that in no way does this continuance reflect any hesitancy to enter into an intergovernmental agreement regarding housing, nor does it reflect any hesitancy to pursue our housing goals. Simply reflects the fact that this was received very late in the day, and the board, in the effort to have good governance, would like time to take a look and look at it in more detail.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? None, I'll call for the vote. That passes 7-0. Is there a motion to take a brief recess?
So moved.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Second.
I'll call for the vote. All right, thank you. We'll take a brief recess and be back.
You guys are on next. Good. Sorry.
Thank you. Oh, how's your trip? It was great. Yeah. I heard that Pam's grandmother was not doing so well. She wasn't, and now she's doing better. Oh, good.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I put her in the hospital. And low platelet count. Injected some platelets, and she's doing better. And it's great to hear. And it's going to be real weak, at least in hospital. Yeah. 101-year-old is surviving.
A month ago, I had a friend, a close friend in Moab, who was 64, and contracted pneumonia and died.
Oh, yeah.
2 weeks in the hospital, pushed him into a coma, and he never came out of it.
Early on in
She was like 63, and Frank was like 70. I remember teaching her and
I'm trying to.
elementary school. She comes up to another 48 hours later, they lived in Apple Valley.
They were in Utah.
But I've worked with her several
And they
times.
died.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, yeah. Now, I think I've
Working on live on rivers
very handsome
sometimes in the past. So,
Yeah, this couple, actually, he and his wife both contracted pneumonia and were flown to the hospital in St. Mary's,
Well, my parents were.
Grand Junction. She survived. And he didn't come out of it. And that same thing, within a couple of days of each other.
Yeah, or if you can put them on the server somewhere, you know.
Yeah, let me go try to do that.
I'm gonna try to send them out through the, before the end of the night. They asked for us to send them to them before the end of the
grass
this day.
come for the academy.
And I'm considering
They can't
whenever I
correct
leave
these
here.
days.
If you do have them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just gonna be like a total background information from Boulder County.
Oh, right, I read that.
All we need is this name, like I showed you that list, that's all we're talking about, the name, the ballpark number, and the location.
They have numbers in there. Let me go see what I can take out.
Yeah, if you got them, it's proceed
Number two.
like pet.
I thought they were talking about number two.
You might be interested in this,
Projects where you
ballot.
Wasn't paying that close.
What's that?
I'll do it.
I think it worked, yeah. Okay, all right, but I don't have it on mine.
With what went on with the physical.
Yeah, that's actually one of those.
Down there, yeah.
Yeah, they've got a fairly big operation. They're like
Good people that like
Yeah,
that.
that's-
People that they don't trust us anymore, but they still like us. No.
It sounded like Connie isn't too keen on them being on the river side. Connie wants them over there, north side. That's my take on it. And I don't know what the issue is, I don't know if she's trying to save them. Because she's got something in mind.
Yeah, we're all jealous. He's not.
Well,
He's kind of.
I thought that, yeah. Well, she wants to change the ratio, she wants to change the ratio of housing and commercial. And she wants more commercial development, which I thought was a little odd, because I thought the big push was for affordable housing. So that didn't make a whole lot of sense. And then she had some issues with the river.
More of these and the less they get into that project, the more they're gonna have to go market rate. Really wanna address the 40 to 60% AMI housing out there, if you're gonna increase the funds. You can't allocate all your money to these other things to raise up the price. So, then the question
They'd have to vote on it.
are you better off putting your housing development into something or are you gonna take a flyer and buying two pieces of raw, one piece of raw land, sending out RFPs?
Where does,
Oh, yeah.
The housing, housing tax credit can be sold off, sold off pretty often, so that's part of it. Part of it.
Section 8?
No, it's not section 8. That's where
Okay, right, they.
You can't afford it here anymore.
But like, some of the changes, it's like part of this.
I keep trying to get like,
I didn't hear about it.
Whereas if the town took all these funds and they put them in a property, it'll be nothing less. They're gonna have to go into some market rate and make it work.
Yeah, I was kind of
When I tried it, it was a mixed market rate. They did the whole thing.
I gotta get some water.
They make money good. That's a combination of low income and market rate.
Yeah.
You go to a workshop. Most of the general,
So Amy, the other Thistle projects, are they combinations of regular market rate and low income?
All right, we're gonna come back to schedule. Move on to general business item number 3. I'll turn it over to staff for
Thank you. Okay, excuse me. Just a note, design concept is here. They came along and they're willing to come up or sit in the audience at your request. As you know, we contracted with Design Concepts in November of 2016 to develop a Dr. Bach plan for the deed restricted buyouts. As part of that process, we signed a contract and worked towards, over the year and a half, a plan. And as part of that, there was a very in-depth public process. And there was also, as part of that public process, a steering of the plan. There were some confusing elements as I look back at the scope and at the RFP, where in some cases it referred to the buyout lands and the scope of the project just being in the municipality, where in other portions it said there was one lot that was outside of the town boundary. I think that led to some confusion about what was part of the scope, and the scope was unclear as to what element or which exact properties would be identified throughout the process. So the public process seemed to hone in on those buyouts in the confluence area, and did not address those in the Martin parcel or buyouts outside of the confluence area. And so as part of the process, the Martin parcel was not incorporated into the planning process. And so when we were coming towards the end of the project, it was identified that, yes, this was part of the original RFP, but there was, again, some confusion with regard to the RFP stated it in different places differently. So we asked the consultants to consider the Martin parcel, which they did, and they thought they could wrap that into the budget they already had. About that time, there was also a requirement from FEMA to improve flooding with the development of the northern overflow, which was part of the confluence area, and part of the planning that had gone into the development of this plan. So the consultant had to adjust their planning effort to respond to a new geography, if you will. So the design concepts indicated they've provided documentation that they spent above and beyond the contract of $23,000. And as part of their request, they are requesting, I think it's $12,400 in reimbursement if the board feels that is fair.
Just a follow-up, does the staff support that recommendation?
I do.
Does the town attorney have an opinion?
I haven't been consulted on this matter.
Just
okay.
another, I'm gonna ask the first question. In section 1.3 in the contract, changes to services, it says that any changes to the services are mutually agreed upon between the town and the contractor are made in formal writing referencing the agreement. In this case, were those changes made in writing?
No, they were not.
Are there other questions from the board? Trustee Kerr?
Yeah, how would it be paid for?
I spoke with Ms. Simonson, and we looked at the 2017 budget, and there seems to be some money that could be allocated to this.
We talked about two different budgets, whether or not it would fit under the planning budget, or because it will end up being a parks, piece of property, could it also be funded under the parks? And the planning budget does not have the room in it. In 2017, the parks budget does. And that's where I'm trying to think, some of the matching funds for the original grant were under the parks, or some of the excess funds were. So right now, if you guys choose to work with Design Concepts on payment, I would recommend it comes out of the parks, 2017 parks budget.
Point of clarification, if I may. There was one attempt to adjust the scope with DOLA, and we had met with DOLA twice, and they indicated that they thought that this adjustment to the scope would be approved. However, it was around the time of the Houston flood, and just after that, they came back with a denial. I'm not sure if it was related to that, but it was a coincidence. So
when we originally entered the grant, there was enough room to cover this. And then it wasn't part of the original scope and was added on, so we did think that DOLA would cover it in the end. And then, I don't know if it was DOLA or someone else along the food chain, but at some point it was denied. So that's unfortunate because there was additional grant funds in the beginning.
Other questions from the board? Any questions?
So my question is for the town attorney. I know you said you hadn't been consulted, but based on what you've heard, or if anything you've been able to read at this point, what position do we put ourselves in if we were to approve this when it comes to how we resolve overages by other contractors in the future, or even ones that we've worked with in the past?
Well, let me just confirm, there was an amended scope in discussions, but not in writing?
there was one attempt to amend the scope. That scope has to go to DOLA for approval. That amendment was denied by DOLA. There were no other scope changes with regard to any of the other elements that were above and beyond.
And I haven't seen the professional services agreement recently on this one, but typically that does, our form, the PSA contains a provision that says no changes to the contract at all unless they're in writing. So assuming that is true, I would venture to guess that, you know, we have extra work performed, not pursuant to a written amendment, and that the town's obligation remains at what is reflected in the written professional services agreement. So if your question is in terms of precedent, Trustee Greenberg, There's, I would say, not anything legally binding on the town, but as a business practice, and, agreeing to pay more when you've got a contracted amount is legally defensible under the terms of the contract. On the other hand, you do have the argument that the town has accepted the benefit of some work that has been done, if that's correct. And so there's potentially some fairness arguments in there that have a legal basis. To really evaluate that, I'd have to spend some more time, but I think those are some competing concerns. You could take a position that the document is the document, it is what it is, but, you did receive some work, the benefit of the work, and that's, I guess, I'm gathering, that's why staff is supporting something.
That is one, yes.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, just one more on page number, on the second page. The second full paragraph with the bolded text. I'm sorry, actually first full paragraph. Says, we agreed with the original town planner, Matt Manley, that the balance could be applied to the project if needed as the plan developed. So, can you just flesh that out for us for just a little bit more, what is being referred to there?
Which document?
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear there, was I? There's a letter from Design Concepts to you.
Okay.
Page 2, it starts with although.
So my understanding, and I may ask the consultants to reply because I was not here all the time when Matt Manley led the project, was that Matt said we could get this extra funding if needed. It would have to be requested, which we did, and it was denied.
Do you have a follow-up? Okay. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to ask for a motion.
I have a quick question for staff. Madam Mayor.
Trustee Travis?
So did someone on staff actually ask them to go beyond the scope of the project, go outside the town of Lyons? Add the other properties?
There was, I would say, the scope was unclear, and so it could be interpreted that way.
Is the RFP reflected that initially, that there was that extra 9-acre parcel?
So the RFP had conflicting elements in it. It said all of the buyouts were within the town boundary in one place. And then on another, it said a county parcel that was 9 acres, which was referring to the Martin parcel.
And then some of this had to do with the northern overflow, right?
Correct.
So is there no funding available from that piece? From the, like, river channel work or anything like that?
I don't think so.
No, it has to be built into the original scope of work to be covered usually, unless you have a formal amendment. And I can recall this because I was, oversaw Matt and Paul during this. And if you recall, we did talk about including the Martin parcel. And then when the process got started, it was decided, no, we're not gonna discuss Martin because we don't have ownership of it. We don't have control of it. So it was kind of off the table. Then at the very end, the neighborhood and I think it was the board, I don't remember who else was, planning commission? I don't know who did it, but it was requested again to bring that in and what would that look like. So then they did that extra work. All under the good faith on both parts that there was additional money in the original contract. We really felt strongly that DOLA would approve it, which DOLA probably would have approved it, but whomever else was doing the checks and the monitors didn't. And so, it's my understanding this is midstream. The original cost invested in this was $24,000, and so this is their halfway point that they feel is reasonable.
Follow-up question?
Sure, Trustee Karas.
To legal counsel, if our records indicate somewhere in our recordings that aren't recording today maybe, that PCDC, this board, asked to go over to the other properties, and they did what we asked, and this board decides now to say, no, we're not gonna pay it, and they decide to take legal action, what would that cost to defend ourselves?
I don't know that I can quantify it at this point. I mean, I would imagine such action would be for the value of services rendered, which is, they're claiming 24.4. You know, unless you went with a nuisance value, I mean, it could be.
What would your cost be to us to defend us? Say if you were the defender for us.
Oh, litigation's expensive.
That's what I'm
We all
getting at.
know that.
That's what I'm getting at.
You know, and I'm cheaper than most litigators. It would probably be something that we would want to farm out to a litigator who's more familiar with the court process, and there would be more expensive, at least in the $200 to $300 an hour range. The other option would be to not fight it, and you know, that's another way to do it. I was just speaking with Mr. Glasgow that there's really sort of three elements here to these. You've got the Martin parcel and the scope of the RFP. We have above and beyond on the meetings and things like that, and then we have the actual northern overflow, which is required by FEMA, that kind of had to be done. And I think it's worthwhile to consider that in your overall analysis. In terms of quantifying a cost, I'd have to sit down, but you know, if you figured 20 hours at a bare minimum at a $250 to $300 an hour range, which would be pricier than what I would charge, but not much. You know, you get close to 20,000 quicker than you might think, or even 12.4 quicker than you might think.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna end this part of it and ask for a motion, and then we can have further discussion if needed.
I move to pay Design Concepts the requested amount, $12,400, to provide a fair share and the deed restricted buyout property land use and management plan project overruns.
I'll second.
Further discussion?
I'd say the reason, there we go. Reason I support this is for a couple reasons. While I'm not necessarily bought into everything that I read here as far as why they went over, and I feel as if it was avoidable, essentially what Design Concepts is saying is that they're virtually splitting the difference with us. So I think that's a good faith effort on their part to bring this to us. What I don't like is how this happened in the first place. I think that if there was any lack of clarity in the scope, that should have been fixed early. I think if FEMA said you must do something, the scope should have been adjusted in writing and should have been brought to us. We are constantly being asked to approve amendments to contracts. I know this is small compared to many of those other amendments, but I think this should be there just needs to be some institutional memory with this when it comes to how we're working with contracts, regardless of the size of the business we're contracting with. But based on what I'm hearing from staff, I feel as if in this instance, it's fair to split the difference and call it good.
I didn't hear this first part of the motion. Was it to pay? Thank you.
Any other discussion or comments?
I just have one more
Trustee
question. Sorry. Is it possible to approve this now and then go back to DOLA and resubmit? Is that a possibility?
That's
Very closed. Yeah, and that's why we brought it to this meeting, was so it could be paid for under 2017 when the work was actually completed instead of in 2018.
Trustee Dresser.
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. That this is another lesson learned. We learned this about 2 months ago with another project that really gets back to needing to have really rigid processes so that, you know, when things like this occur very early on, there should be documentation, and the documentation should be shared with the board, you know, so that we would all participate in the resolution as early as possible. Now, the way this unfolded, we may still have gotten into the situation we're in because of what was going on with FEMA at the time. But I agree that we benefited from the additional work. The offer here is, I mean, it's good faith, and so I do support the motion.
All right. I just want to say I can kind of make the comments on that too. So with that, I will go ahead and call for the vote on the motion to approve this payment. Now, this is not in a resolution. Will we actually see a resolution?
That's what I was just making a note to myself as to whether or not
This is
there'll be
a
a resolution or
procedure
even an
payment.
amendment that would document
We
the
need
contract.
something probably that's an official.
Yeah. Yeah,
Maybe more
I was
official.
just making a note to consider the actual official way to track this.
I'm not sure which way it's gonna go.
And I need to speak with you about
Yeah.
grants and impacts on that, but I want to make sure that the same thing.
So when it comes back, it'll most likely be on the consent agenda, but I understand where it came from. Okay, I'll call for the vote. And it passes 7-0. All right, thank you, and thank you for being here, Design Council.
Thank you
for
for
all the work
working
you
on
did.
it. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 4 from the minutes. So we're moving on to item 1 on the consent agenda. That was pulled by Trustee Law, so we'll turn the floor over to
Okay, I pulled this because this is the language that will be on the ballot to the voters, so maybe the easiest way, I guess I'm requesting an amendment to the language on the ballot that's going to the voters, and I would like it to match the last whereas of the ordinance on this issue, which was ordinance 1026. Is that sufficient?
You also change the from $3 to $2.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
okay. So 2 amendments so far.
I'm gonna suggest a process. Actually, I think for this, could we just have a motion to get it started and then make the changes by amendment, since these were amendments.
Oh,
to
right,
the
yeah.
other ordinance. I think also being ballot language, let's be really clear about what our changes are. So is there a motion just to get started with the process?
I move we start the process of changing the language to the ballot going to the voters on April 3rd, I think, 2018.
I'll second that.
All right, so I'll call for the vote. So we're not voting to approve it, we're just voting to amend it. Okay.
Okay.
That's okay, we'll pass that 7-0. Go ahead, Trustee White.
Okay, so I propose that the language, let's see. Everything would be the same, starting with the word town, it's like the 5th line up, in the amount of $2, and then change the dollar amount from 3 to 2, per day, effective June 1, 2018. and shall all revenues derived from such occupation tax be collected and spent on any lawful municipal purpose, including but not limited to the cost of accounting for impacts of short-term visitors to the town. And then strike the general marketing and promotion of the town of Lyons and the marketing and promotion of Lyons special events. The rest of the language would remain the same.
With a notation that your overall estimate at the top will also have to be revised in accordance with the $2.
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Good, seconded. So I just want to ask, could the town attorney or someone who feels most appropriate read it as it would be in the final ballot? And assuming we know the numbers need to change at the top.
Shall town of Lyons taxes be increased by blank total amount annually, paren first full fiscal year increase, and by whatever amounts are raised annually thereafter through the adoption of, it's missing an of, so I should fix that. A town occupation tax on the short-term rental, paren less than 30 consecutive days of any hotel room, motel room, lodging room, motor hotel room, guest house room, bed and breakfast room, campsite, or other similar accommodation located in the town in the amount of $2 $2 per day, effective June 1, 2018, and shall all revenues derived from such occupation tax be collected and spent on any lawful municipal purpose, including but not limited to the cost of accounting for impacts of short-term visitors to the town, subject to approval.
Cost of impact of short-term visitors.
Yeah, that's what it said, cost of accounting for impacts of short-term visitors to the town. With such revenues to be collected and spent as a voter-approved revenue change, notwithstanding any revenue or expenditure limitations contained in Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution. Sorry. Not as smooth as I hoped. Trustee Harris.
You need another reason, I guess, to change that.
I agree.
The dry spot, put forward.
Trustee Dresden.
I think that since other exemptions such as the federal government and so forth are not expressly mentioned, that you don't really have to mention but you probably have to take into account that the town provided campsites would not be part of the amount, the 88,000.
Something like that could be, or campsite parens excluding.
Can I offer just, maybe you put the word eligible in front of within the town, that piece of it, if you just put eligible that way, it would imply there are some that are and some that aren't.
Yeah.
Would that satisfy?
Yeah.
And would we also include in the motion that the town attorney can make other adjustments as necessary for the ballot language to comply with statutes?
That would be great when we make the final motion to approve. So I think if there's no other discussion, we could vote on this amendment to modify the ballot language as discussed. Town attorney feels, Trustee Wild, you
And just a point, I think section 6, oh wait, yeah, of the resolution grants that authority already to the town attorney.
Okay.
That's, yeah, to effectuate the provisions of this resolution, including action to cause the ballot question to be printed, but I think it's probably better that you add that on to your motion, just to be perfectly clear.
Okay, I'll call for the vote on the amendment. It passes 7-0. Is there a motion for the overall resolution?
I move we approve resolution 2018-11. As amended.
Would you like to add the that the attorney can make minor adjustments.
And bad at this. As long as the attorney has the authority to make minor adjustments to adhere to the language that we're approving.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion on this resolution? I'll call for the vote. All right, that passes 7-0. Thank you. Item number 2 from consent, I pulled. I had a couple of suggestions. I think regarding the broadband ballot question, I would like to add to the whereas a little bit to add a little more context for those who might want research why we're asking this. I think that one of the reasons I think we are pursuing this is the town may wish to explore connecting to Longmont municipal network to enhance our ability to recruit and retain businesses, particularly in the eastern corridor. I would love to have a whereas that captures that intention.
So the town is considering, I mean, I know this, but I just want to be sure I capture what you said, is considering.
So I don't even know if I would say we were considering. I think that we may wish to explore connecting to Longmont's municipal network to enhance our ability to recruit and retain businesses, particularly in the eastern corridor.
To recruit and retain businesses, particularly in the eastern corridor.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
So I guess I was going to ask for a motion to approve the resolution, and then I can offer that.
I move we approve resolution 2018-12.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I would like to offer an amendment to add a whereas, as just described to the town attorney.
I'll second that motion.
We'll vote on that. I don't know why I can't see it for me. 7-0, it passes, thank you. Is there any other comments or amendments before we vote on the resolution? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on resolution 2018-12. Passes 7-0. Thank you. I also pulled item number 3. In this case, I would like to actually revise the ballot language itself. I'm concerned that some people don't know what our current term length is. So I don't know that they would know that 4 is it 2, is it 3? So I think that I would like to see this language clarified to inform the voter that they're increasing it from 3 terms to 4. So I have some proposed language. If someone wants to make a motion to approve the resolution, I can offer those words.
I move we approve resolution 2018-13.
I'll second that motion.
I would like to offer an amendment to revise both questions to state, shall the number of consecutive 2-year terms for the mayor or trustee, whichever question is being used, be increased from 3 to 4, and then the rest of it the same, as long as that works for the town attorney.
I just thought it might be helpful to include maximum and to serve as positions. So it would read, for example, for the mayor, shall the maximum number of consecutive 2-year terms of office that the mayor is authorized to serve as mayor be increased from 3 to 4.
I'm fine with that change.
And the same for the next question. And I just wanted to point out, the board did request 2 separate questions. And I think I remember a comment because the mayor's at large, but all y'all, as we like saying, are at large.
Yeah.
And in theory, you could consolidate this into one question if you wanted to. Because there's it's up to you.
Would it just be the second? I'm sorry. No. Thank you, Mayor.
You need like a big purple hand or something to wave.
So would it suffice that section 1 only has the second language because we're all members of the Board of Trustees?
Or you could just say, shall the mayor and members of the Board of Trustees. I mean, it's really a distinction without a difference, except for, I don't know from a communications standpoint what option you want to select.
Go ahead.
So the follow-up question would be, would this change the fact that someone can run for, currently you can run 3 consecutive terms as a trustee, and then run for 3 consecutive terms as mayor, or the other way around. This doesn't seem to make a distinction. It says, shall members of the Board of Trustees be authorized to serve 4 consecutive 2-year terms of office?
As a member of the Board of Trustees is what I was trying to point out, so that it
Okay.
could be clear if that's what the intent is, versus as mayor. Because I believe your code, it's gonna take me a second. It just says that you serve 2-year terms. I'll respond to that question. Take me a second to pull that up. So, election, mayor and board of trustees. The legislative and corporate authorities of the town is vested in a board of trustees consisting of 1 mayor and 6 trustees who are qualified by X by Z. Members of the board and the mayor shall be elected for terms of 2 years, commencing in 1988. Thereafter, no term of current office holder shall be shortened or extended. So basically, it doesn't really specify. And the idea here would be, if the questions are approved, then we would draft an ordinance to reflect that. There was no need to draft an ordinance in this case unless it received voter approval. So the way I would read this now is, yeah, you could serve 3 or potentially 4 consecutive terms as a member of Board of Trustees, and then similarly on top of that as mayor.
Question on that?
Trustee Carroll?
How does that pertain to your situation? You were a trustee for how many years before you became mayor?
4.
Oh, you were up here, so you were on for a long time. Wow, appreciate the punishment.
I was gonna say, if anybody wants to challenge that interpretation, now's the time.
No, I'm not, what Pro Tem Weaver asked, what was explained, so say someone's one term as a trustee,
Yeah.
then becomes mayor for say this passes for 4 years, then do they go back and, can they go back and run for free? I
No,
mean,
you
so
cannot
once
go
you-
backwards.
Okay, that's
you
what
can
I
go
did.
forward.
Consecutive
Trust me, I've asked this
terms.
question to make sure I'm not term limited.
Okay.
But my understanding from the clerk is that you can, this is what I've been told, you can run for trustee for 3 terms and then run for mayor for 3 terms if you choose to.
Yeah.
But you cannot go back and run for trustee after you've been.
But what if
So in this case, I think you would.
But what if you served 1 term as trustee,
Trustee.
is what I was asking.
Yeah.
Then a mayor, something left, you ran, you became mayor. Before you became mayor, you only served 1 term, 1 2-year term. Do you then have 2 more terms to serve, or do you start over at 1? How does that work? And I never really thought of it until you just asked your question and you got the answer you got.
I honestly, our code isn't very clear. I've researched the state statutes, which regarding just can we extend the term limits, and clearly we can do that.
That's in the Constitution.
As long as it's done by a vote of the people. I've never found any language that really talks about the kind of going from one to the other and back and forth. I think the understanding has been that you don't go back. Once you've done 3 terms, your term limited. And then you have to sit out for 2 consecutive terms before you can come back, whatever that term is. That's how the statute reads, is that it's considered consecutive unless you skip 2 terms.
And I'm actually checking the statute that sets out the organizational structure that, and it's basically the language that's in your code, which is, legislative authority shall be vested in board of trustees and blah, blah, blah. And then elected a mayor for a term of 2 years and 6 trustees for terms of 2 years. Those are separate offices.
Town administrator, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think it references, I agree, that I think it's referring to the positions. I don't think there's anything saying you can't go back and be a trustee for 3 more terms.
Yeah, I've never seen that, but I haven't looked for
Don't
it
know why,
either.
I mean, but.
You never know.
How is you're elected for that
Um,
position for that term, so.
So, I guess I'm not too concerned about that problem.
No.
I guess I'm gonna weigh in on the two, I think it should stay two separate questions, is my preference. I think people may feel like they feel okay with one but not the other. And so I think it's fine to leave them separate. And I have completely lost track of where we are in the process at this point. I think
We have
a
an approved motion and a second, and you're making amendments.
And then I made a motion to amend, and we have language. Do you want to reread the language just to make sure it's something?
Just trying to find it.
I'm not sure it's been seconded.
It hasn't been.
Okay. Sorry.
I think the first amendment was to shall number of consecutive two-year terms increase from 3 to 4, and then Kathy recommended adding.
Yeah, a
language.
maximum, add that, and then.
And then clarify mayor,
You know,
trustee.
mayor serves two, consecutive terms as mayor and as trustee, respectively, in those questions. And just by way of pointing out, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but right now you have two-year terms, so with 3 consecutive two-year terms, it's a max of 6 years. And the way the Constitution is set up is, most other offices are 4-year offices, most offices in the state. And so the Constitution limits those folks to 2 consecutive 4-year terms, which means they get 8 years. You, mayor and board of, members of board of trustees get 6 years under current term limits. If you went with this additional term, you would be extending, if the voters approved it, be extending to 8 years, which would be on par with other offices in the state. So I just wanted to make sure that that was.
I actually have an amendment to that.
Okay. We are tracking.
Yeah, I second the amendment.
We have a second, so any further discussion on the change to the language? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote on the amendment. And that passes 7-0. Okay, and I was actually gonna offer another amendment that I would like to see us add a whereas that states that very point that the town attorney just made, that one of the reasons for offering this is to, basically not leave money on the table. If someone's willing to serve 8 years, and we could have had 8 years of service if we had gone to 2 4-year terms, this still gives voters the option to elect someone or not, but it does at least offer the town the opportunity to retain people willing to serve up to 8 years, which is the same as it would have been had we made that change. So I had kind of a simple whereas to say the Colorado Revised Statute allows for a total of 8 years of service for elected officials in statutory towns using the system of electing trustees and mayor for 2 consecutive 4-year terms.
Yes, the
Something along
Constitution
those
is
lines.
good.
So I would like to make a motion that we add that to the whereas clauses to make that point. So if anyone wants to understand the reasoning behind the change, so.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on that? I'll call for the vote on that amendment. It passes 7-0. I just had one final question. Does this, the way it is worded, should someone who's currently term limited decide at the last minute they would like to take advantage of this if it were to pass, would they be eligible with the current wording?
But isn't it too late? Yeah, it's too late because the election would be happening.
The election's over.
No, they could pick up a packet and submit it, no.
But it wouldn't be approved.
Okay.
Yeah. In theory, until the actual date of the election.
Okay, so no, they would not. But I think that.
It's all post facto.
Okay, so I think that's just a point to be made, I mean, that's understood. So I think.
Change your heart?
We want gas.
Tried.
Packet deadline passed already.
Monday.
I'm pretty sure it did.
No, it's Monday.
It passed?
No.
No, it's Monday.
His packet deadline.
All right, I'm gonna call for
Still
a vote
time.
on the overall resolution.
I have a question.
I'm sorry,
Is-
go ahead.
Just for clarification, we're voting for there to be two separate ballot questions. Is that true?
All right, any further discussion? I'll call for the vote on the overall resolution. And that passes 7-0. All right, thank you. I believe the next item pulled was item number 6. I pulled this one as well. I would like to ask the board if they'd be willing to continue this item. I would like to also request that staff send the entire IGA with red lines for the changes that are being made. It was hard to tell how significant these changes were without seeing them in the context of the entire document. So I would like to see that before we approve, if the board doesn't have any objection to that. Would someone please, trustees?
I would just add to that, it was challenging to interpret the proposed language and to understand. I think what was hard to get was specifically what was the significance of the services provided by the sheriff change, and how that impacts. What does that mean for us? So I'll make a motion. I move that we continue resolution 2018-7.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Any questions from staff or any clarification? Okay, call for the vote. Passes 7-0. All right, thank you. The final item pulled from consent is number 8. Mayor Pro Tem, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. I'd like to ask the town planner, I know there's various ways to go with this particular plaque.
Mhm.
And so could you just talk about some of them, why specifically you recommend going with dedicating it as a right of way, or why you chose this direction?
Sure, there were, part of the reason when we looked at the area is, this is when I spoke to the town engineer, he considers this to be a collector. It's a major through route. And when I looked at the collector right-of-ways in our code, they indicated a 64-foot right-of-way. So the reason that, because this is a road, it's going to look and act like a road, I considered it good form to call it a right-of-way. And I know there's been discussion of whether this would be better as an easement, as a parcel with an access easement. But if you, and that was to, well, it was predicated on the idea that there was a municipal campus. The municipal campus hasn't, I have not seen a design for it, or I have not understood that that was under development. So the reason that we went with a right-of-way is, or that we're recommending a right-of-way, is that this is a major through route. It will look and it will act like a street, and so having it as a dedicated or a designated right-of-way seems to make sense. There is, when you look at an easement versus a right-of-way, if you try to change where you can build in that area, that process, you would have to, again, then vacate that right-of-way if it is designated right-of-way. And that when you vacate a right-of-way, you're giving a portion of each side of that right-of-way to the adjacent landowner, as it states in our code. So there is some reason, if we don't think this will be a road in the future, not to have it as a dedicated right-of-way. If we do believe it will be a road, to dedicate it as a right-of-way.
The discussion of a municipal campus is not that old. I know there hasn't been significant progress on that
Mhm.
recently. However, my understanding is there's still vision for that possibility.
Okay.
So my question is, based on what you just said, what I'm hearing you say is the town stands to potentially risk losing some of its own land should we go from right-of-way to other, rather than from some other designation eventually to a right-of-way.
If we are intending to build upon that land, and we have to vacate a right of way, yes.
So, for the town administrator, do you feel as if there's reasonable potential for a municipal campus to be developed at
Well,
some point?
my recollection of the municipal campus was we were awarded 2 grants at the same time. One was for the housing needs assessment and coming up with a housing site, and the other was for a municipal campus. If you recall, when Trestle was involved and we had started the municipal campus, and we needed the funds from that grant to continue our housing pursuit. So that grant ended, but there's no reason we can't, if the planning commission or whomever wants to take this on and continue it. You know, my vision would still be that this area becomes a municipal type campus, including the library. But there's not funding right now to do that. It would have to be internal or allocate funding toward it if you wanted an outside party to conduct it. Recall that when that happened?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I'm.
Yeah, that's why there's no grant funding for it, but I certainly think it still should be laid out how we'd like to see it.
So I guess go ahead.
In that case, I think we should reconsider. We should table this and look at the option for the municipal campus. But if we are heading in that route, that way, we need to consider, way, I think, more heavily why we would want to go with the easement. I've weighed the right of way more than the easement. So I would like to look at that in more detail. And if we are, I think, my understanding, I don't know, I think we can still zone the property based on the legal description in the plat, even if the plat is in draft form. So I have to go back and look at that as well. But the process, as I understood it, is we would want to plat, zone, and then thereby start the library development process. I don't think this will hold it up if we delay this decision one council meeting, because the zoning is coming to the board on the 15th. Or I'm sorry, on the
Right.
the 5th.
Right, okay.
February.
So you feel as if you were to make a different recommendation of this, or either way, the library work is not impacted in any negative.
I don't feel that way.
Okay. Are there any other potential negatives for not approving this tonight?
Anything to do with the plat?
No, this is the plat.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I can think of.
Okay, thank you for I really appreciate your presentation.
Sure.
Is there a motion?
I move that we table resolution 2018-10.
Table or continue?
The town planner asked to table it.
Or we could,
It's a resolution, so.
it is a resolution, so we can bring it back.
Yeah, it's actually tabling, continuing.
It does.
In this case,
I'll second that.
Generally, we've used that to mean we're just not gonna do, generally
We're just not gonna approve it.
end up
Yeah.
saying it just goes away once it's tabled. So continuing means we intend to see it again. We want it
Okay.
back.
Yes.
Generally, that's the interpretation we've used.
Okay.
Anyway,
All right.
maybe that's
Continue.
not right, but that's how.
All right.
My six
Well, we wanna- don't
years
wanna-
on the board.
Do I need to make an amendment to
How long?
move
I
to
just
continue
revise your
rather than
motion.
table it?
Just revise your.
Everything is typed.
So my hope is to weigh those two a little more and bring back some more information to you.
Right.
And a direction. My question is, if this allows more flexibility, if an easement would allow more flexibility with regard to building in the future in that 64-foot area between the south edge of the library lot and the north, or the south edge of Railroad, would you like us to consider an easement?
Well, my
Or
understanding is that
recommended.
an easement supports a municipal campus vision
Yeah.
more than a right-of-way does. And if, listening to the town administrator, there's still, it's still something that.
Vacating is the issue.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Sorry.
That's okay, it's something for us to, if we want to keep our options available for whatever we choose to do with this space, then it seemed, from what I'm hearing now, and you may come back in 3 weeks and say, no, that's not the case.
Yes.
But what we're hearing now is we may want to keep our options open, and that an easement does that for us. That a right-of-way limits our ability to develop a municipal campus in the manner in which we desire.
I just don't know what that desire would be. So if it's keeping all options open, yes.
Okay. Then I think, my understanding is that's where we are with this, is keeping all options open.
Okay.
As long as it doesn't negatively impact other things we know are happening. That's the way I see it.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
I'd like to satisfy the mayor, I would like to rescind my motion to table and make a motion to continue resolution 2018-10.
I'll second that one too.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the votes. And that passes 7. Thank you. So I think we have time for some brief trustee reports, because I do have something I need to ask the board kind of for some input on. Do you want to just quickly go around?
I mean, we didn't have January, December humans aging commission meeting, so I don't, we are still in to human services and housing. And we are still working on the same stuff we always do, which is transportation and medical. So we're trying to get a group together to start working on the medical.
I have the names, I just need to.
Okay.
Get the names.
The Arts and Humanities Commission is really working hard at trying to get a kickoff of a new Arts on the Street kind of program. They're looking to have a $30 application fee for artists who apply, and also a 10% sort of finder's fee if something is sold. The question is, can we get that started before the fee schedule is established? Is there a way to get that done? You know, perhaps by a resolution that enables that, and then with the point that it will become part of the fee schedule as soon as that gets done. So we don't need to work that right now. I just wanted to bring that up as we establish.
So Sustainability and Futures is really focusing their efforts on preparing for a workshop with the board in February to get guidance from the board regarding how to make any changes to our hauler ordinance, if that's what we want to do. Changes would be focused on more sustainable trash removing practices in the town in order to divert more trash away from a landfill. There's various ways to do it. There's a waste hauler subcommittee that will be working quite a bit over the next month in order to prepare for that presentation to us. My initial understanding is that February 20th is available. Is that still the case for a workshop?
It is.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. It could be. We also have February 20th earmarked for the Lyons Valley River Park Pond final design. They wanted that brought back at 90%. So if they were able to do that, you know, maybe not the full hour and a half, but if you could get by an hour maybe, or, I don't think the other will take a long time, but does need a little time.
Let me find out, but they're also working on a timeline to try to get something
No,
before this board.
I think it's definitely a workshop issue.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thank you. Let me communicate that with them. And so you're saying that
Yeah. February 20th for an hour.
60 minutes.
Mhm.
Okay, let me see if they say that.
Okay.
Thank you. And that's really the most important thing I have.
College board meets tomorrow. That's not much else going on. Just a quick note that starting tomorrow through about February 2nd, there will be a contingent of Lyons volunteers down in Texas working. So we'll have bodies for almost 10, 12 days, 15 days down there.
At the community that contacted me for guidance, so isn't that neat? And I've reached out to their city manager to let him know to find you and all that, so.
Trustee Moss?
The Marketing Tourism Grant Committee has been working on this concept called Amplify, which is basically amplifying our current events by involving our local businesses and helping those local businesses to amplify these events. So one thing that we are planning is on February 10th, and hopefully Kim Mitchell has been speaking to you about this, but we're planning kind of a grand opening, so to speak, of the ice skating rink, but tagging it next to Old Man Winter to try and, what's that?
Chill Fest.
Chill Fest, right. I forgot the name we came up for it. Yeah, Chill Fest. So it would take place in Laverne Johnson Park. It would highlight that, yes, we have an ice skating rink that's open. We're trying to get some of our local entities involved. The Polar Bears, they're actually doing a plunge on the 10th anyway, but I'm coordinating with them. The Lyons Community Foundation has agreed to come and have a booth, and I'm also reaching out to the library. They haven't gotten back to me yet, the Lyons Leos. So basically our community organizations, just giving them an opportunity to highlight what they do. And then I'm not sure how far we've gotten with Ian Phillips, but we're gonna have Ian hopefully do some outreach to our local businesses to help them understand how they can capitalize on this event. So kind of a brief overview of that. The EDC meeting was pushed out a week, so we are going to meet on Thursday this week. Anything you want to add on Amplify or marketing?
It's just that the involvement of businesses may be coupons or special Chill Fest related items that businesses would be promoted.
And if I could comment on the EDC meeting, we are going to start meeting with the board about the wastewater treatment plant inflow issues. So they're gonna have that presentation on Thursday as the beginning step.
And I've been in contact with Aaron, just kind of asking for the status of the treatment ordinance and where does it stand? And they're working on it. I'm sure you might just throw your gun in there and talk about that.
Anyways, we'll be working on that probably Wednesday. And the other thing that was brought up at the last meeting was the stormwater sewer fee that was recently brought up. could be some challenges in, how we collect that, and staff is gonna look at that, more. And Joe is gonna bring that up to staff to discuss.
We had a meeting on it on Friday and came up with a plan and timeline.
Okay, good.
All right, so we have a Dr. Cog meeting tomorrow night where potentially a big decision being made about how the funding for the next tip cycle is going to be allocated. And I think I gave you kind of an idea that they're using a very different process this time. I guess from a voting perspective, there's going to be several proposals put on the table in terms of whether there's this kind of a big regional bucket for big projects that cover lots of communities and they're really large, typically like highway infrastructure connectivity products. They can be multimodal projects. We really don't have much that qualifies for that bucket. All of the money that we would be eligible for will go into the community, smaller sub-regional bucket. So the question is how much money is going to go into each one of those two categories. So right now, the proposal has been more of 20% to the big projects, 80% to the sub-regional projects. Apparently, that gives some of the federal folks a little pause because the whole goal of TIP money is to do big regional connectivity projects. And so it would only allocate like $20 million to the big projects to break it out this way. So even though it would shrink the pot of money that's available to us, I would like to see if the board is okay with me voting for something less than 80-20, probably more like 70-30. But honestly, there was no consensus at the last meeting. So it's a kind of anyone's guess where this is going to end up. We may not even get to a point to where we vote, but everyone was very much like, we got to make a decision on this. We can't have another meeting where we just spend 2 hours. Everyone has it. I mean, there are probably 50 members, that have a vote in this from across the metro area. So I personally feel like 70-30 is fine. I mean, I think it still gives us a good opportunity to get a project funded. However, I just want to make sure the board is okay with going with a lesser amount even. It supports our kind of regional goals to do that. And at the end of the day, we all get stuck in traffic in Denver on occasion. So that's really where the money probably gets spent. Does anybody have any strong feelings one way or the other? I just don't want you to come back and say, well, wait a minute. I think that's really the most pressing thing. I didn't want to I'll be out of town almost all of next week, just FYI, so I think you're around. We might be around for, hopefully. Or you're going to be in Texas. Are you in Texas? Oh, you're not going. Okay. So anyway, but I'll be available by email if needed. So. Okay.
I have one other item.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
I would like to ask the board if you have any interest in pursuing or directing the planning commission to reevaluate the entertainment overlay district on Main Street. We have had 3 businesses in the last couple of months, 3 potential businesses come to staff wanting some component of alcohol related industry. And this seems to be an issue that is preventing them from being able to move forward. And so I just want to know, because it is an ordinance, is there any interest in learning more? I know this board wasn't seated when it was adopted, but, or do we have an interest in asking the planning commission to put this higher on priority to make some changes? Mm-hmm. Or consider changes?
I think this requires exploration. I had a conversation with one of the Main Street owners and pulling their hair out, trying to figure out a way to maximize their ability to essentially function as a business. I think we should look at any and all options and then whittle it down from there. But I would support moving this to the top.
Is it something that staff could draft an ordinance, or do you want it to go through the planning commission? Because I don't think, from their perspective, Trustee Dry said it's not their priority, correct?
like to see the EDC weigh in.
EDC.
We actually
Okay.
talked about that ordinance. I mean, I'm not sure it's not our purview to change the ordinance, but at least have them give an opinion.
Okay.
And then I would just add, I actually was sitting on the board when we passed that
Oh, you were,
ordinance,
okay.
and our goals were so different at that time. And as somebody that agreed with it in the past, I would be very open to looking at it again and revisiting when we get there.
Let me ask this, does anybody object to looking at it? Okay, so it sounds like yes, move forward with it. I guess I'll defer to staff as to
Okay.
whether you think PCDC needs to weigh in on it. That would be my suggestion. I don't want to create work for them if we
I
feel like
know.
it's a simple change, then.
Part of it is, I think if it's an important and timely issue, it may not hurt to have an ordinance drafted based on what we're hearing from Main Street folks and potential developers, and then have planning commission review it and recommend it, versus having them have to learn everything about it from the past and
Is there a
propose
way
it.
we could expedite this to say, let's just bring it and invite just PCDC to kind of hear it with
And
us, so that we
EDC.
don't have two
Mhm.
separate, I mean, it depends on how
We can look
significant
at-
the changes would be.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to know how important is it to use on our priority list, so.
I would like to say it'd be pretty important for, if it's our local businesses, we went out of our way to speed through a mortuary change for someone who wasn't even here yet, so I would think that this has priority over that.
Okay, thank you.
I think you had.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, it would be good for the VCDC to be involved, and I don't think it would be a problem to get it onto their priority.
It's already there, it's just not the number one priority. They're wrestling with what they're putting to the top right now. So if this is one of the number one, we can
Okay.
focus on this one.
All right, thank you.
All right, so I think at this point, we're gonna go into executive session. Can I ask for a motion?
I move to go into executive session pursuant to CRS sections 24-6, 4024A, 24-6, 4024E, and 24-6, 4024B for the purpose of discussing the possible purchase, acquisition, or transfer of a real or personal property interest, determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators, and for receiving legal advice from attorneys representing the town on specific legal questions, and specifically discussing the possible purchase and acquisition of real property interests, determining related negotiating positions and strategies, and instructing negotiators for the purpose of providing affordable housing within the town and obtaining advice as needed from the town attorney on related legal issues. I further move to reconvene the board meeting at the conclusion of the executive session for the purpose of taking any actions deemed necessary.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? I'm just gonna say that I accept this motion as authorization to continue past 10:30. All right, I'll call for the vote.
Who was your second?
Who seconded it?
Thank you. There's a brain.
All right, so we're gonna go into executive session because they did everyone to please and stop the recording.
No, that was taken out.
I know, but I'm waiting, but the fact that was public.
We stop the camera. So we have to cover it up.
No, that could have happened,
No.
then we would have known what it was.
Camera.